Hi everyone, welcome to Red Umbrella. I hope you're all doing well. Today we'll be looking at 3 hours of unsolved South Park mysteries and theories to fall asleep to. We're covering the weird gaps, the forgotten plot lines, and the questions that still don't have answers after more than 2 decades. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough. Let's begin. Kenny McCormick dies in almost every episode of the early seasons. He gets crushed, he gets electrocuted, he gets torn apart by wild animals, he gets hit by trains, he gets impaled on flagpoles. Then the next episode starts and Kenny is alive again. Nobody mentions it. Nobody asks questions. For years, fans treated this as just a running gag, something funny that happened because the writers wanted it to happen. But then season 14 came along and changed everything. The show revealed that Kenny's constant deaths and returns were not just a joke. They were real. Kenny actually dies every single time, and Kenny actually comes back every single time. The mystery is how this happens, and why Kenny remembers each death when nobody else does. The show gave us some answers, but left other pieces unclear. We know Kenny was born with a curse. His parents went to a Cult of Cthulhu meeting before Kenny was born. They wanted to get high for free. The cult was handing out beer and drugs to anyone who showed up. Kenny's parents walked in during an active ritual. The cult leader saw them there and used their presence to complete a ceremony. That ceremony transferred immortality onto their unborn child, so Kenny gained the ability to be reborn after every death. His mom literally gives birth to him again overnight. Kenny wakes up the next morning in his bed like nothing happened. He goes to school, he hangs out with his friends, he wears the same orange parka, then something kills him, and the cycle repeats. This shows us how it works. Kenny cannot stay dead. His body comes back to life through his mother every single night after he dies. But it does not explain why Kenny is the only one who remembers. Everyone else in South Park acts like Kenny never died at all. They do not mourn him, they do not notice he vanishes and returns. Only Kenny carries the weight of knowing he died yesterday and will probably die again tomorrow. The show really dug into this mystery in the Coon and Friends trilogy. These 3 episodes aired in season 14 between March and April of 2010. Kenny takes on the superhero identity Mysterion. He wears a dark costume with a hood and a question mark symbol. He uses his power to help people because he knows he will always come back if something goes wrong. During these episodes, Kenny talks about his curse openly for the first time. He tells his friends he dies over and over. He says he wakes up in his bed the next day and nobody remembers what happened. He describes the pain and loneliness of living this way. Kyle and Stan hear him say this, but they do not believe him. They think he is making up a dramatic backstory for his superhero character. Even when Kenny proves it by shooting himself in the head right in front of them, they forget about it by the next scene. The show plays this moment completely straight. Kenny pulls out a gun, he shoots himself. He falls to the ground dead. Kyle and Stan panic for a few seconds, then the scene cuts away. When we see them again, they are acting normal. They forgot Kenny died. This is the part that still does not make complete sense. Why does the curse include everyone in town forgetting things for everyone except Kenny? The cult ritual explains why Kenny cannot die permanently. It does not explain everyone in town forgetting things affecting the entire town. The episodes give us one important clue about how deep this goes. Kenny confronts Cthulhu itself during the trilogy. He stands before an ancient cosmic being and demands answers. Cthulhu does not speak, but it acknowledges Kenny. It recognizes him. Kenny asks Cthulhu to remove the curse. Cthulhu does nothing. It just stares at Kenny with its massive eyes and then turns away. This suggests Kenny's curse is not small or local. It is tied to massive forces that exist outside normal reality. The cult did not just make Kenny hard to kill. They connected him to something vast and incomprehensible, something that bends the rules of life and death and memory all at once. Kenny's curse is way bigger than his parents realized when they stumbled into that meeting high on drugs. They wanted free beer. They ended up binding their son to cosmic horror. That is the trade they made without knowing it. And Kenny pays the price every single time he dies. He feels the pain. He experiences the terror. He remembers everything. Then he wakes up and does it all over again. Fans have been trying to figure out what the show didn't explain. Most fans think Kenny's curse changes reality, not just keeps him alive. When Kenny dies, the universe fixes itself. It resets everyone's memory to match a version of history where Kenny did not just die in front of them. This would explain why his friends never grieve and never remember. They are not ignoring Kenny's deaths. Their memories get completely changed every time. The curse keeps itself safe by stopping people from messing with it. If people remembered Kenny dying, they might try to fix him, or study him, or ask questions. questions. Wiping everyone's memory keeps Kenny alone. It keeps him trapped in a cycle nobody else can see. Another popular theory is that Kenny exists slightly outside normal time. Kenny's awareness jumps around between deaths while everyone else just keeps moving forward normally. To them, Kenny never left. To Kenny, he died and suffered and came back. Both things actually happen, but they don't match up. The show has never confirmed or denied either theory. It leaves just enough room for fans to wonder. Some fans also think the curse might be punishment for something Kenny did in a past life. Others think it might be connected to Kenny being poor. The cult targeted his parents because they were easy to manipulate. That made the curse about being poor, too, that the show never fully explored. The Coon and Friends episodes also revealed something darker about how Kenny feels mentally. He is exhausted, he does not want this power, he has tried to explain it to people and failed, he has tried to use it for good and ended up more alone. In one scene, Kenny visits a Cthulhu cult meeting himself to ask for help. The cult members sit in robes, chanting. Kenny walks in and begs them to break the curse. They tell him they cannot. Or they will not. Either way, Kenny gets no help. He realizes he is stuck. No amount of heroism will free him. No amount of dying will end the cycle. He will wake up tomorrow in his bed, and the day after that, and the day after that, forever. The show played this for both comedy and tragedy. It is funny when Kenny gets smashed by a falling piano. It is sad when you remember he feels every second of pain, and then wakes up knowing it will happen again. The way it's both funny and scary at the same time makes Kenny's mystery so interesting. The show keeps asking whether this is a superpower or a curse, and the answer keeps being both. Looking back now, Kenny's immortality cycle represents one of South Park's longest-running mysteries, even after the partial reveal. The show gave us the how, but not the full why. We know the cult ritual caused it. We know Cthulhu is involved somehow. We know Kenny remembers while others forget. But we do not know how the memory wiping actually works. We do not know if the curse can ever be broken. We do not know what would happen if Kenny stopped being reborn. Would reality collapse? Would everyone suddenly remember all his deaths at once? Would he finally be allowed to rest? These questions remain unanswered. The show moved on to other plot lines after season 14. Kenny still dies occasionally in later episodes, but the show stopped treating it as a mystery. It became background noise again. The gag returned to being just a gag. Fans who want a complete explanation are still waiting. The pieces we have fit together into a rough picture. A cult ritual tied Kenny to cosmic forces. Those forces keep him alive and keep everyone else unaware. But the full scope of what that means is still hidden. That is what makes this one of South Park's deepest unsolved mysteries. Moving on, we have Cartman's true father resolution gaps. Section 2. Cartman's true father. Resolution gaps. Cartman does not know who his father is. This was a major mystery during the show's early seasons. The question built across multiple episodes until it finally got an answer. But that answer created more questions than it solved. The show revealed Cartman's father and then moved on like the mystery was closed. Except it was not fully closed. Gaps remain. Details do not quite line up. Fans noticed these problems and spent years trying to figure out what the show actually meant. The core question seems simple. Who is Cartman's biological father? The show gave us an answer in season 2, but the path to that answer was messy, and the aftermath left loose ends that never got tied up properly. The mystery started in season 1, episode 12, titled Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut. The episode set up a big reveal about Cartman's father and then ended on a cliffhanger. Fans waited months to find out the truth. When season 2 finally came back, the first episode was supposed to answer the question. Instead, it did something weird. The episode spent most of its runtime on a completely unrelated Terrence and Phillip storyline. It was an April Fool's prank on the audience. Fans were furious. They wanted the Cartman answer, and the show made them wait even longer. When the real answer finally came in episode 2, titled Cartman's Mom is Still a Dirty Slut, it was not what anyone expected. The episode revealed that Cartman's mother, Leanne, was actually his father. This didn't make any sense if you think about how bodies work. The show explained it by saying Leanne was intersex and had both male and female anatomy. She had gotten drunk at a party years ago and impregnated another woman. That other woman gave birth to Cartman. Leanne raised him as her own. This was what the show said was true for years. Leanne was Cartman's dad. Case closed. Except that answer did not stick. Later seasons changed the story without making a big deal about it. In season 14, episode 5, titled 201, the show revealed the truth was different. Leanne was not actually Cartman's father. That whole storyline had been a cover-up. The real father was Jack Tenorman. He was a Denver Broncos player who had a brief relationship with Leanne. He died before Cartman was born. This meant Cartman's father was dead the whole time. It also meant the show had lied to its audience for over a decade. The Leanne explanation was false. The real answer was Jack Tenorman. But here is where it gets complicated. Jack Tenorman was the father of Scott Tenorman. Scott was the kid Cartman famously tricked into eating his own parents in chili form back in season 5, episode 1. Cartman got revenge on Scott for humiliating him by killing both of Scott's parents and feeding them to him at a chili cook-off. It was brutal and dark, and fans loved it. But when the show revealed Jack Tenorman was also Cartman's dad, it added a new layer. Cartman did not just kill some random kid's parents. He killed his own father, and he made his half-brother eat that father. Cartman had no idea they were related when he did it. The show never told him. As far as we know, Cartman still does not know Jack Tenorman was his dad. This leaves a bunch of questions unanswered that fans still argue about. First question, why did the show lie about Leanne being Cartman's father in the first place? Was it just a joke that went on too long? Was there an in-universe reason for the cover-up? The show never explained who created the false story or why. Did Leanne lie to protect Cartman from knowing his father was dead? Did the town lie to avoid scandal? Did the writers just change their minds years later and hope nobody would notice? Second question, if Cartman has their genes, does that mean he's evil because of his family? Jack Tenorman was described as cruel and selfish. Scott Tenorman was vindictive and mean before Cartman destroyed him. If Cartman shares their blood, does that mean his evil tendencies are partly genetic? The show has never explored this. Third question, will Cartman ever find out the truth? If he learns Jack Tenorman was his father, how will he react? Will he feel guilt about killing him? Will he feel nothing? Will he use it as an excuse to be even worse? The show dropped this bomb and then just walked away. Cartman remains unaware. The audience knows, but Cartman does not. There is also the mystery of Cartman's other relatives. If Jack Tenorman was his father, Cartman technically has relatives he has never met. The Tenorman family exists somewhere. Do they know about Cartman? Do they care? The show introduced Cartman's cousin and other family members in scattered episodes, but never connected them to the Tenorman lineage. Then there is the question of what Leanne knows. She clearly knew Jack Tenorman was Cartman's father. She was there, she had the relationship, she raised Cartman alone after Jack died. Did she ever plan to tell Cartman the truth? Did she intentionally keep it secret to protect him from grief? Or did she just never care enough to bring it up? We don't really know why Leanne does what she does. She has been portrayed as both caring and neglectful, depending on the episode. The show has never clarified where she stands on this specific issue. The Scott Tenorman connection adds the darkest layer to the whole mystery. That chili episode was written and aired years before the Jack Tenorman reveal. The writers didn't think of this connection until later. They went back and added it. This means Cartman's worst act became even worse in hindsight. Fans argued about whether this was good or bad. Some people loved the added tragedy. Cartman's greatest triumph was also his most horrible mistake. He destroyed his own family without knowing it. Other fans thought it was too much. The chili episode worked because it was over the top and cartoonish. Adding real family ties made it feel too serious. The show has not addressed this debate. It dropped the reveal and moved on. Cartman still brags about the chili incident in later episodes. He has no idea he is bragging about killing his father. The irony hangs over every mention of it. But the show refuses to pop that bubble by telling Cartman the truth. Fans have also noticed smaller continuity issues tied to Cartman's parentage. In some early episodes, Cartman mentions his father in passing like he knows who the man is. In other episodes, he clearly has no idea. The show was not consistent about whether Cartman knew his father was absent, or dead, or unknown. Some fans excuse this as when shows are just starting out and haven't figured everything out yet. The writers had not figured out Cartman's backstory yet, so details shifted around. Other fans think the things that don't match up might be hints. Maybe Cartman does know more than he lets on. Maybe Leanne told him partial truths over the years and he blocked them out or ignored them. Or maybe Cartman just makes things up about his father to avoid looking weak in front of his friends. All of these explanations are possible. None of them are confirmed. Looking at Cartman's father mystery now, it is clear the show wanted to have it both ways. It wanted the shock of the original Leanne reveal. Then it wanted the tragedy of the Jack Tenorman twist. But it did not want to deal with the emotional consequences of either answer. So it gave us both reveals and then walked away. What we end up with is a mystery that only kinda got answered. We know who his actual parents are. Jack Tenorman is Cartman's father. Leanne is his mother. Scott Tenorman is his half-brother. But we do not know what it really means emotionally. We do not know what Cartman would do with this information. We do not know if Leanne regrets keeping it secret. We do not know if the Tenorman family even remembers Cartman exists. The show created a bunch of questions without answers around a question it technically answered. That is what makes this one of South Park's most frustrating, unresolved mysteries. You have the pieces, you just do not have the picture they are supposed to form. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to South Park Memory Reset versus Persistence. Section 3, South Park Memory Reset versus Persistence. South Park is really inconsistent about remembering what happened before. Sometimes the show remembers everything that happened before. Characters reference old episodes, they bring back old jokes, they follow through on plot lines from seasons ago. Other times, the show acts like nothing ever happened. Major events get forgotten. Characters go back to how they were. The town resets to normal. This makes a pattern that fans have been trying to make sense of. Does South Park have continuity, or does it reset after every episode? The answer seems to be both. And that contradiction might not be a mistake. It might be how the show actually works. The theory is that the people of South Park have picking and choosing what to remember. They remember some things and forget others, based on rules we do not fully understand yet. The show ran for years without worrying about continuity at all. Early seasons treated each episode like a standalone story. Kenny would die. The town would face a crisis. Everything would go back to normal by the next week. Nobody remembered what happened. Nobody learned lessons. This was standard for cartoons at the time. The Simpsons worked the same way. Family Guy worked the same way. You could watch episodes in any order and it would not matter. But South Park started changing around season 18 and 19. The show began experimenting with telling one long story across multiple episodes. Episodes connected to each other. Stories kept going from episode to episode. Characters actually changed and stayed changed. Season 19 introduced PC Principal as the new school principal. He stayed. He did not disappear after one episode like most new characters did. Season 19 and 20 also followed ongoing stories about gentrification, online trolling, and elections. These seasons were like watching one big movie instead of different episodes. Fans noticed the shift. Some loved it. Others wanted the show to go back to standalone stories. But here is where it gets interesting. Even when the show was telling longer stories, some stuff still went back to normal. Characters would forget major events when it was convenient. Relationships would go back to normal, even after huge fights. The town would rebuild itself overnight after getting destroyed. It felt like the show wanted to remember the past and forget the past at the same time. This only makes sense if you think the show is doing it on purpose. Maybe the townspeople of South Park actually do forget things. Maybe their memories get erased or hidden or changed on a regular basis. This would explain why they can experience insane events and then act normal the next week. It would explain why they never learn from their mistakes. It would explain why South Park stays stuck in a loop of chaos and recovery. You can see proof of this memory thing throughout the whole show. In Season 10, Episode 6, titled Man Bear Pig, Al Gore visits South Park to warn everyone about a dangerous creature. The town ignores him. They treat him like a joke. Flash forward to Season 22, Episode 7, titled Nobody Got Cereal. Al Gore comes back. The town suddenly remembers Man Bear Pig was real. They apologize to Gore for not listening years ago. This means they remembered the original episode. But if they remembered, why did they ignore Gore for over a decade? Why did they need something bad to happen before they remembered? Another example is Tweek and Craig's relationship. In Season 19, Episode 6, titled Tweek x Craig, the town ships them together as a couple. The boys go along with it to make everyone happy. The relationship sticks. Tweek and Craig stay together in later episodes. The town remembers this relationship and treats it as real. But the town forgets other relationships that seemed just as important. They forget character deaths that should matter. They forget crimes that should have consequences. The show is being inconsistent on purpose. One of the clearest examples comes from how the town treats Cartman. Cartman has done horrible things across hundreds of episodes. He has killed people, he has manipulated people, he has caused massive damage to the town over and over again. Yet, people keep trusting him. They keep falling for his schemes. They keep letting him back into their lives like nothing happened. In Season 5, Episode 1, titled Scott Tenorman Must Die, Cartman feeds a kid his own parents. The whole town finds out about this. They see Cartman laughing about it. Then in later episodes, people still hang out with Cartman like he is a normal kid. They still let him join groups and participate in activities. This only makes sense if people forget how evil Cartman actually is. Or if they remember but their brains suppress the memory to avoid dealing with it. Either way, the town is not operating with full knowledge of past events. Something is stopping them from actually punishing Cartman. The serialized seasons gave us the strongest hint that memories might actually be getting messed with. During Season 19 and 20, the show introduced member berries. These were small talking berries that made people remember the past in a positive way. They said things like, "Member Chewbacca?" and "Member when there were no terrorists?" People who ate member berries became obsessed with nostalgia. They wanted to go back to how things used to be. The berries were changing how people remembered things and how they felt to control them. The show showed that member berries were part of a bigger plan. They were being used to influence elections and change history. This was the show straight up showing us that you can't trust memories in South Park. If berries can rewrite how people feel about the past, what else can rewrite memory in this town? The show left that question hanging. Fans have come up with a lot of theories about this. Some think South Park exists in a time loop. The town goes through the same stuff again and again with small changes. This would explain why characters never age, and why problems never get solved permanently. Others think there is something from outside erasing memories after major events. Maybe the government, maybe aliens, maybe something supernatural. The show has suggested all of these, but hasn't said any are definitely true. Another theory is that the kids are the only ones with reliable memories. Adults forget. Kids remember. This would explain why the kids seem to notice patterns more than their parents. It would also explain why the kids keep making the same mistakes. They remember the past, but they are powerless to change the future because the adults around them keep forgetting. Going back to standalone episodes after Season 20 suggests the show might have given up on long connected stories. Or it might have been making a point. The seasons with connected stories showed what happens when the show tries to keep track of everything. It gets messy. It gets complicated. It stops being fun. So the show went back to forgetting. Characters reset. Plot lines dropped. Remembering the past became something the show could ignore again. But fans who watched the serialized seasons cannot unsee what they learned. We know the show can remember stuff when it feels like it. We know the characters can remember when the writers decide they should. The fact that the show chooses not to most of the time feels like a choice, not a limitation. That decision is why we see this forgetting pattern now. Looking at South Park's memory issues now, it is clear the show is playing both sides. It wants to have fun with standalone episodes where nothing matters, but it also wants to reward longtime fans with callbacks and references and character growth. The middle ground is remembering some things and forgetting others. The town remembers what the story needs them to remember. They forget what the story needs them to forget. This isn't a mistake. This is how it's supposed to work. Fans who want full continuity will always be frustrated. Fans who want pure episodic comedy will always be annoyed by callbacks. The show met in the middle and made a world where you can't trust what people remember. That makes South Park one of the few shows where forgetting the past is actually part of the lore. Next up is Chef's disappearance and lore impact. Section 4. Chef's disappearance and lore impact. Chef was one of South Park's most important characters during the early seasons. He worked as the cafeteria chef at South Park Elementary. He sang songs to the kids. He gave them advice about life and relationships. He was the one adult in town who actually listened to them and treated them with respect. Chef appeared in dozens of episodes from Season 1 through Season 9. Then, he vanished. The show killed him off in Season 10, Episode 1, titled The Return of Chef. But the way it happened was messy and strange and full of what was happening in real life that made the whole thing uncomfortable. Chef's exit was not just a story decision. It was a response to a real conflict between the show's creators and the actor who voiced Chef. That fight affected what happened in the episode and left questions that still have not been answered. Chef was voiced by Isaac Hayes. Hayes was a soul singer and actor who made the character feel warm and funny. Chef became famous for singing songs about sex and love to elementary school kids. It was inappropriate, but played for laughs. The character worked because Hayes sold it with his smooth voice and timing. For 9 seasons, Chef was a staple of the show. He helped the kids solve problems. He was there to make people laugh. He was basically the only normal adult who understood how crazy South Park really was. The boys would come to him with questions. Chef would respond with a song or some blunt advice. This happened the same way for years. Chef was the steady part of a crazy show. Then, in Season 9, something changed. What was happening when they were making the show? The show aired an episode called Trapped in the Closet that made fun of Scientology. The episode depicted Scientology's origin story and portrayed Tom Cruise hiding in a closet. It was brutal satire. Isaac Hayes was a Scientologist. He did not like the episode. From what people said, Hayes asked the creators to pull the episode or tone it down. The creators refused. They believed in making fun of all religions equally. The show had mocked Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and other faiths for years. They were not going to give Scientology special protection. The fight got bigger. Hayes eventually quit the show in early 2006. He released a statement saying he could no longer be part of a program that disrespected religious beliefs. The creators felt like Hayes stabbed them in the back. The creators were frustrated because Hayes had voiced Chef through years of episodes that mocked other religions. He never complained before. But when Scientology got hit, suddenly it was too far. They thought Hayes was being a hypocrite. So they got rid of Chef in a way that showed how mad they were. The Return of Chef aired in March 2006. The episode brought Chef back after a long absence, but something was wrong with him. He was acting strange. He was saying creepy things to the kids. He was trying to molest them. The boys realized Chef had been brainwashed by a cult called the Super Adventure Club. This cult traveled the world molesting children. They had corrupted Chef and turned him into a monster. The boys tried to save him. They confronted the cult leader. They begged Chef to remember who he used to be. For a moment, it seemed like Chef might break free. Then he snapped back to the brainwashing and ran away. Chef fell off a bridge. He got impaled on a tree branch. He got mauled by a mountain lion. He got torn apart by a grizzly bear. His body fell into a river and disappeared. Then the cult brought him back as a Darth Vader-style cyborg. The episode ended with Chef gone and the boys mourning him. The episode was harsh and cruel. They wanted to embarrass the character to get back at Hayes. Fans disagreed. Some thought it was funny and deserved. Hayes had abandoned the show over 1 episode after years of mocking other religions. The creators had every right to be angry. Other fans thought it was too harsh. Chef was a beloved character. He did not deserve to die like that. And Hayes himself might not have been fully in control of the decision to quit. People said the Church of Scientology forced Hayes to quit, that Hayes was conflicted but felt he had no choice. If that's what happened, then the episode was punishing Hayes for something he didn't choose. The show never talked about these stories. It just killed Chef and moved on. But here is what makes Chef's death a lore mystery. The show brought him back. Sort of. In later episodes, you can see Chef working in the cafeteria again like nothing happened. He appears in the background. He serves food, he does not talk, he is just there. Fans noticed this and started asking questions. Is Chef alive? Is this his ghost? Is this the cyborg version? Is this a different Chef from another dimension? The show never explained. It just kept showing Chef in the background without acknowledging the contradiction. This matches that forgetting pattern from before. The town forgot Chef died. Or they remember, but they do not care. Or the Chef we see now is not the same Chef who fell off that bridge. Any of these could be true. The show hasn't said which one is right. The Super Adventure Club became part of South Park's backstory that never got resolved. The cult existed to mock Scientology without saying the word Scientology directly. But after Chef's death, the Super Adventure Club just disappeared. The show never brought them back. The show never explained what happened to them. They brainwashed Chef, killed him, turned him into a cyborg, and then vanished from the story completely. Do they still exist? Are they still out there brainwashing people? Did the boys ever report them to the police? The episode treated the cult like a serious threat and then dropped it. That's an unanswered question that bugs fans who want answers. Losing Chef changed the show in ways the creators might not have expected. He was the adult who gave the kids good advice. He was the one who made sense. After he left, the kids had to figure things out on their own more often. Or they had to rely on adults like Randy, who are completely useless. The show became meaner after Chef died. It became darker. Some fans think the show lost some of its kindness when Chef left. Other fans think the show got better without him, that it forced the writers to find new ways to tell stories. Both ways of seeing it make sense. What's obvious is that when Chef left, the show lost something it never got back. Looking back on Chef's disappearance now, it remains one of the messiest character exits in the show's history. The real-life fight messed up the story. The creators let their anger at Hayes shape how they killed the character. And then they brought Chef back in the background without explaining it. This made a mystery that's part story and part the show commenting on itself. Is Chef alive? Is the show mocking its own continuity by putting him back? Is this another example of picking and choosing what to remember where the town just forgot he died? We do not know. The show refuses to answer. Chef is stuck in this weird place where he's dead and alive depending on what episode you're watching. That makes his story one of South Park's strangest unresolved plotlines. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the hidden power level of Butters. Section 5. The hidden power level of Butters. At first glance, Butters looks like the weakest character in South Park. He is naive, he is sweet, he gets grounded for things that are not his fault. His parents abuse him emotionally and physically. Other kids bully him constantly. Cartman uses him as a punching bag. At first glance, Butters looks like the weakest character in the entire show. But if you pay attention, Butters has a habit of doing huge damage when he loses it. He has alter egos. He has hidden talents. He has moments where he completely destabilizes the world around him. The question is, if Butters is really weak, or if he's actually the most dangerous kid. The show keeps suggesting Butters has power he doesn't completely get or control. And when that power comes out, bad things happen. Butters was just an extra in the first seasons. He barely had lines. He existed to fill out classroom scenes. But the writers started using him more. They turned him into the fourth main character after Kenny started dying less often. Butters became the innocent one. The kid who believed everything adults told him. The kid who tried to do the right thing and got punished for it anyway. His parents, Steven and Linda Stotch, are some of the worst parents in South Park. They ground Butters for no reason. They blame him for their own problems. In one episode, Steven tries to drown Butters because Steven thinks his wife is cheating on him. Butters survives, and his parents act like nothing happened. This is what Butters deals with growing up. Constant punishment. Constant fear. Constant confusion about why bad things keep happening to him. But Butters doesn't stay weak forever. The show started showing his mean side in season 6. In episode 6, titled Professor Chaos, Butters gets kicked out of the main group. The boys tell him he is too lame to hang out with them anymore. Butters goes home devastated. Then, something changes. He decides to become a supervillain. He makes up another identity called Professor Chaos. He wears a costume made of cardboard and tinfoil. He plots to cause chaos and destruction. His first evil plan is to flood the world by leaving garden hoses running. It does not work. His second plan is to mix up mail in mailboxes. That also fails. Professor Chaos is played for laughs at first. Butters is too nice to be a real villain. But the important part is that Butters created an identity separate from himself. He found a way to express anger and frustration that his normal personality could not handle. Professor Chaos became the way for Butters to do all the stuff he couldn't do as himself. Professor Chaos kept appearing in later episodes, sometimes as a joke, sometimes as something more serious. In Season 13, Episode 2, titled The Coon, Butters joins a superhero group as Professor Chaos. He is still trying to be evil, but nobody takes him seriously. The other kids treat him like a joke. But then, in Season 14, during the Coon and Friends trilogy, Butters switches sides. He becomes a hero named General Disarray. He helps Mysterion fight Cthulhu. This shows Butters can shift between identities depending on what the situation needs. He is not locked into being good or evil. He adapts. And being able to switch like that makes him unpredictable. You never know which version of Butters you are going to get. The show also showed Butters is good at stuff nobody saw coming. In Season 13, Episode 9, titled Butters Bottom Bitch, Butters accidentally becomes a pimp. He starts managing prostitutes and running a business. He is good at it. He makes money. He treats his workers with respect. He builds a successful operation. The joke is that Butters has no idea what he is actually doing. He thinks kissing is the most extreme thing people pay for. But underneath the joke is something real. Butters is a natural leader when given the chance. He organizes people. He solves problems. He creates systems. You wouldn't think the kid who's always grounded could do this stuff, but Butters can do it. The episode ends with Butters getting arrested and his parents grounding him. But he doesn't lose those skills. They're still there for next time. Another example comes from Season 16, Episode 1, titled Reverse Cowgirl. Butters' mom dies in a freak accident involving a toilet. Butters is sad, but he moves on. Then the town brings his mom back as a zombie. Butters has to deal with his undead mother who is falling apart and acting strange. He tries to help her, he tries to keep her together. Eventually he has to let her go. The episode shows Butters dealing with death and sadness better than most adults in South Park. He does not break down. He does not go crazy. He accepts what happened and keeps going. Not many characters in this show are that emotionally strong. Most characters fall apart when faced with loss. Butters stays steady. Then there is the tap dancing episode. In Season 15, Episode 7, titled You're Getting Old, everything in the show changes. Stan starts seeing and hearing everything as literal shit. The episode deals with depression and aging and losing joy in things you used to love. Meanwhile, Butters is tap dancing. He is happy. He is singing. He does not care that the world is falling apart around him. This became a meme in the fandom. Butters tap dancing while everything burns. It represents his ability to find joy in terrible situations. Or it shows he's out of touch with reality. Either way, it shows Butters just works differently than everyone else. Fans started saying Butters is like the secret final boss you fight at the end of a video game. The idea is Butters looks harmless until suddenly he's not. When Butters finally snaps for real, he will destroy everything. The show has suggested this could happen, but hasn't actually done it. In some episodes, Butters gets revenge on people who wronged him. In Season 11, Episode 8, titled Le Petit Tourette, Butters pretends to have Tourette syndrome so he can say whatever he wants without getting in trouble. He insults people, he reveals secrets, he causes chaos. When he gets caught, he just goes back to being sweet, innocent Butters. Nothing bad ever sticks to him. He always goes back to normal. The show has never really shown us what Butters could do if he stopped being nice. We've seen little hints. We have seen Professor Chaos. We have seen him run a prostitution ring. We have seen him survive being drowned by his father. We have seen him handle grief and death with more maturity than adults. But we have not seen Butters go all out. We have not seen him use his full power on purpose. That is the mystery. Does Butters even realize how dangerous he could be? Or is he holding himself back because he's too good to let the bad side win? The show doesn't answer this question. It keeps Butters looking harmless. But there are signs that might not be true, and every once in a while, something leaks out that reminds you Butters is more than he appears to be. Looking at Butters now, he's like someone who could do so much but doesn't. He could be a villain. He could be a hero. He could be a leader. He could be a destroyer. Instead, he is just Butters. He gets grounded. He gets bullied. He stays sweet and kind despite everything the world does to him. But he has the skills. He has the power. It's just waiting to come out. And fans keep waiting to see if that moment will ever arrive. The show keeps hinting at it without actually showing it. That is what makes Butters' hidden power level one of South Park's most interesting mysteries. You know he's got it in him. You just don't know if he'll ever actually use it. Up next is the question of Token's name origin. Section 6. The question of Token's name origin. Token Black is the wealthy black kid in South Park. He lives in a mansion. His parents have money. He plays bass in a band. For over 20 years, fans assumed his name was Token. like he was the one black character they added. It was clearly making fun of how shows add one diverse character and call it good.
Shows add one character of color and act like that fixes representation.
South Park was making fun of that cliche by actually calling the character Token. Everyone accepted this. Fans called him Token. The wiki listed him as Token. Even the show's creators referred to him as Token in interviews. Then in season 25, the show dropped a bomb. Token's name was never Token. It was always Tolkien, as in J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of Lord of the Rings. The show said fans had been mishearing the name this whole time, and the show used this to make fun of everyone who thought it was a race joke. This came out in season 25, episode 2, titled The Big Fix. The episode is mainly about Stan discovering he has been saying Token's name wrong his entire life. Stan finds out the name is actually Tolkien. He panics. He feels terrible. He thinks he has been racist without knowing it. The other kids all claim they always knew it was Tolkien. They act like Stan is stupid for not realizing. Stan goes to Tolkien and apologizes. Tolkien accepts the apology, but seems confused about why Stan is making such a big deal about it. The episode makes this as awkward as possible. Stan keeps trying to prove he is not racist by doing more racist things. He assumes Tolkien must love Lord of the Rings because his name is Tolkien. Tolkien has never read Lord of the Rings and does not care about it. Stan buys him the books anyway. The episode ends with Stan realizing he made everything worse by trying to fix something that was not actually a problem. But here is where it gets weird. The show said this was the truth all along. The credits for old episodes were updated to say Tolkien instead of Token. The official South Park website changed his name. The creators acted like fans had simply misheard the name for 2 decades. But fans went back and checked. They watched old episodes with subtitles, they listened to how characters pronounce the name, and the proof goes both ways. In some episodes, it sounds like Tolkien. In other episodes, it clearly sounds like Token. In some episodes, characters say Token Black, which makes no sense if his name is Tolkien Black. Why would his last name be Black if his first name is already a reference to a white British author? The combination feels intentional, like the show named him Token Black specifically because it was funny. Tolkien Black does not have the same punch. This started a huge argument among fans. Some fans believe the show was telling the truth. It was always Tolkien, and we all just assumed it was Token because we were primed to see a racial joke. This way of seeing it means the audience is part of the problem. We heard what we thought we'd hear instead of what was really being said. That is a clever meta-commentary on assumptions and bias. Other fans called bullshit. They insisted the show retcon the name and then gaslit everyone into thinking we remembered it wrong. This way of seeing it says the show changed the past to prove something. Both sides had proof. Both sides had reasons. The show refused to pick a side. It just kept insisting the name was always Tolkien and left fans to fight about it. The creators gave interviews about the episode. They said the joke is that Americans are so used to having one diverse character that we hear Token even when someone says Tolkien. They said this shows something about how we take in information. We make things fit what we already think instead of really listening. This makes sense if you trust what they're saying, but it also sounds like something you'd say if you changed it and didn't want to admit it. You can't prove which one is actually right. The show decides what's real. If they say it was always Tolkien, then it was always Tolkien. Even if fans have recordings of episodes where it sounds like Tolkien. Even if the subtitles used to say Token. The show can change those things. And it did. Then there's the question of what this means for who he is. If his name is Tolkien, why is he named after a fantasy author? The show never told us why. Tolkien's parents are wealthy and cultured. Maybe they named him after J.R.R. Tolkien because they loved the books. But the show has never shown them being fans of Lord of the Rings. It has never connected the name to anything in Tolkien's actual life or personality. The name is just there now, with no real reason. If his name was Token, the joke was just part of who he is. Simple and clear. If his name is Tolkien, the joke is about us assuming it was Token. The actual character matters less than what the show is saying about us. Some fans think this makes him a worse character. Others think it makes him more interesting because it makes you question what you assumed. Fans also notice they did this to a character who's barely in the show. Tolkien isn't a main character. He shows up, but he's not usually important to the story. He exists mostly in the background or as a supporting player, so changing his name feels like making a big deal about a character who isn't important enough for all this drama. If the show really cared about Tolkien as a character, it would give him more episodes. It would develop his personality beyond being rich and black. Instead, the show used him as a prop for a meta joke about racism and assumptions. That feels kind of mean to some fans. It feels like the show wanted to look good for talking about racism without actually making him a better character. The Big Fix episode aired in February 2022. Since then, the show has continued calling him Tolkien. Characters say Tolkien. The credits say Tolkien. The official materials say Tolkien. As far as the show cares, this is done. But fans are still divided. You can find long threads on Reddit arguing about whether the name was always Tolkien or whether the show retconned it. People pull up audio clips, they analyze voice patterns, they compare subtitle files from different streaming services. Both sides have proof that looks good if you already agree with them. The show made a mystery you can't solve because the answer depends on whether you believe the creators or believe what you remember. Looking at the Tolkien versus Tolkien debate now, it's a strange moment in the show's history. The show made fans question what's real. It used the show's history as a weapon to make a point about race. And they did all this with a character who's not even important. Some fans loved it. They thought it was genius commentary showing how fast people assume things about race. Other fans hated it. They thought the show changed things and then made fun of fans for calling it out. Both ways of feeling about it are fair. The show made the joke work no matter how you see it. If you think it was always Tolkien, the joke is on you for thinking different. If you think they changed it, the joke is still on you for caring this much. No matter what, the show comes out on top, and Tolkien is still one of the least developed main characters. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the geography of South Park. Section 7, the geography of South Park. South Park, the town, does not make sense when you try to map it out. Buildings appear and disappear between episodes. The school is sometimes next to downtown and sometimes far away in the mountains. How far apart things are changes based on what the episode needs. In one episode, it takes 5 minutes to walk from Stan's house to the school. In another episode, the same walk takes an hour. The town has a mall, a farm, multiple restaurants, a military base, and an airport. But the population is only about 4,000 people. That's way too small for all these places to exist. Yet they all exist. Fans have spent years trying to create accurate maps of South Park, and they always run into contradictions. The town's layout doesn't match up on purpose, or the town itself is unstable, or the writers do not care about continuity. All three explanations might be true at the same time. The show established early on that South Park is in Colorado. It is a small mountain town. The kids go to school at South Park Elementary. Their parents work in town or commute to nearby cities. The town has a main street with shops and restaurants. There are neighborhoods with houses. There are farms on the outskirts. There are mountains surrounding everything. This basic layout shows up in most episodes, but the details change constantly. Sometimes the town looks tiny, with just a few buildings. Other times, it looks like a full city with office buildings and shopping centers. How big the town is changes based on what the episode needs. If the story requires a Walmart, suddenly there is a Walmart. If the story needs the town to feel isolated, all the big stores disappear. One of the biggest things that doesn't match up is the school's location. In some episodes, South Park Elementary sits right in the middle of town. The kids walk to school from their houses in a few minutes. You can see the school from the main street. But in other episodes, the school is far away in the mountains. The kids have to take a bus. The school sits alone on a hill with nothing around it. Both versions show up throughout the whole show. There's no pattern for when the show uses which one. It just picks whichever layout works better for that specific episode. The same problem happens with the boys' houses. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny all live close to each other. You can walk from house to house easily. Except when you cannot. Sometimes their houses are spread across different neighborhoods. Sometimes they are all on the same street. The show has never said exactly where anyone lives compared to everyone else. The town also has places that shouldn't exist in a town with only 4,000 people. There is an airport called South Park International Airport. It has runways and terminals and flights to other countries. But 4,000 people cannot support an international airport.
There is a military base called the South Park Correctional Facility. It holds prisoners and conducts secret experiments. Again, too big for a small town. There is a mall with multiple stores and a food court. There are several bars and nightclubs. There is a concert venue that hosts major acts. There is a theme park called Super Fun Time. All of these locations appear in episodes and then disappear when they are not needed. The show treats them like they always existed, even though they were never mentioned before. This makes a town layout that gets bigger or smaller based on the story. Fans have tried to map South Park using screenshots and studying episodes. They mark where buildings appear, they track distances between locations, they try to create a layout that fits all the episodes. But it never works. Every map has contradictions. The school cannot be in two places at once. The houses cannot be both close together and far apart. The town cannot be both tiny and big enough for an international airport. Some fans gave up and said the town's geography is just a joke. The writers put things wherever they want without caring about consistency. Other fans think there is a pattern we have not figured out yet. Maybe the town actually changes. Maybe South Park exists in a space where reality is flexible. Maybe the inconsistencies are intentional and mean something. One theory is South Park sits on top of some kind of hellmouth or magical spot. This would explain why weird things keep happening there. Aliens visit, celebrities show up, supernatural creatures attack. The town gets destroyed and rebuilt constantly. If South Park is sitting on top of something that creates chaos, that could explain why its geography does not follow normal rules. The town bends reality around it. Buildings move. Distances change. Nothing stays fixed because the town itself is unstable. The show has suggested this might be true without actually saying it is. In some episodes, the town is described as cursed. In others, it is just a normal place where weird stuff happens to happen. The show won't pick which explanation is right. Another theory is the town shows how kids see the world instead of how it actually is. The show is mostly told from how the kids see things. When you are a kid, distances feel different. The walk to school feels long some days and short others. Your town feels huge when you are exploring it and tiny when you are stuck at home. The changing layout might be showing how kids experience distance. It's not about real maps. It's about how far things feel in your head. This theory explains why the town changes depending on what's happening. The story shows how the kids are feeling. When they feel isolated, the town spreads out. When they feel connected, everything is close together. The layout is about feelings rather than actual distance. Then there is the question of what exists outside South Park. The show mentions other towns nearby. There is Middle Park and North Park. There is Denver, which is a real city. The kids sometimes travel to other states or countries, but we never see a clear map of how South Park fits into Colorado. We do not know how far it is from Denver. We do not know what highways connect it to other places. The town is in its own little bubble. It has enough details to seem real, but not enough to actually put it on a map. This keeps the show flexible. The writers can add new locations or change distances without breaking continuity, because there was no continuity to begin with. Fans have also noticed that the town's elevation changes. South Park is in the mountains, that much is clear. But how high up? In some episodes, the town is covered in snow year-round, like it is near the peak. In other episodes, there is barely any snow, even in winter. The climate changes between episodes. The amount of trees changes. The steepness of the hills changes. Everything about the setting changes based on what the episode needs to show. This makes it impossible to figure out exactly where in the mountains the town is. It could be at 8,000 feet, it could be at 12,000 feet. The show will never tell us because nailing it down would make it harder to tell new stories. Looking at South Park's geography now, it's clear the things that don't match up are on purpose, not mistakes. The town is whatever it needs to be for each episode. This gives the writers total freedom. They can add a ski resort if they want a ski episode. They can add a water park if they want a water park episode. They do not have to justify where these places came from or how they fit into the existing town. The locations just appear, and the audience accepts it because that is how South Park works. Fans who want a consistent map will always be frustrated. The show has no interest in providing one. The town is in a state of organized chaos where anything can happen and nothing is permanent. That might be the whole point. The town is just as wild and unpredictable as the stories that happen there. Next up is Mr. Hanky's Lore and Disappearance.
Section 8. Mr. Hanky's Lore and Disappearance. Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh was one of South Park's most famous characters during the early seasons. He was a piece of poo that came to life. He wore a Santa hat, he sang songs, he spread Christmas cheer. Kyle was the only person who could see him at first. Everyone else thought Kyle was crazy. Then, Mr. Hanky revealed himself to the whole town and became part of South Park's Christmas tradition. For years, Mr. Hanky appeared in holiday episodes, he had his own specials, he had a family with a wife and kids, then he vanished. The show wrote him out in season 22, and he has not come back since. The way it happened was harsh and final. And it makes you wonder if Mr. Hanky will ever come back, or if he is gone for good. Mr. Hanky first appeared in season 1, episode 9, titled Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh. The episode aired in December 1997.
It was South Park's first Christmas episode.
The town was fighting about holiday decorations. Some people wanted Christian symbols, others wanted inclusive symbols. The debate got heated. Meanwhile, Kyle kept talking about Mr. Hanky. He said Mr. Hanky visits him every Christmas. He described Mr. Hanky as a magical poo who lives in the sewer and only comes out during the holidays. Everyone thought Kyle was insane. His parents took him to a mental hospital. Then, at the end of the episode, Hanky appeared to everyone. He sang a song. He saved Christmas. The town accepted him as real. Mr. Hanky became a South Park tradition. Over the next 20 years, Mr. Hanky appeared in multiple Christmas episodes. He had his own TV special within the show. He hosted pageants. He brought his family to visit. His wife was named Autumn. His kids were Cornwallis, Simon, and Amber. They were all pieces of poo with different personalities. The show treated them like a normal family. Mr. Hanky became one of the most recognizable characters from South Park. People who never watched the show still knew about the singing Christmas poo. He appeared on merchandise, he had his own songs. He was part of what South Park was for 20 years. Then, everything changed in season 22. The episode that ended Mr. Hanky was called The Problem with a Poo. It aired in November 2018. The episode was about cancel culture and how celebrities get destroyed for old tweets and past behavior. Mr. Hanky was running the town's Christmas pageant. He was doing his usual thing, singing, spreading cheer, making jokes. Then someone dug up his old tweets. Mr. Hanky had posted offensive things on social media, racist jokes, insensitive comments, things that were supposed to be funny but crossed lines. The town turned on him. They called for him to be fired. They protested outside his house. Mr. Hanky tried to apologize. He said the tweets were taken out of context. He said he was trying to be edgy and funny. Nobody cared. The town wanted him gone. The episode showed Mr. Hanky falling apart. He started drinking, he got angry, he lashed out at people who used to support him. He went on talk shows and made things worse by defending himself poorly. Every time he spoke, he dug the hole deeper. Kyle tried to help him. Kyle was the one who always believed in Mr. Hanky. He wanted to give him a second chance, but even Kyle could not save him. Mr. Hanky had gone too far. The town voted to remove him from the Christmas pageant. They told him to leave South Park and never come back. The episode ended with Mr. Hanky getting on a train. He left town alone. The train took him away. The last shot showed him looking out the window, sadly, as South Park disappeared behind him. This was how the show got rid of a character who had become a problem. Mr. Hanky was always controversial. He was a piece of poo. That was the joke. But over time, the joke stopped being funny. Parents complained about having to explain Mr. Hanky to their kids. Merchandise featuring him stopped selling as well. The character felt old and out of place. South Park had started telling more complicated stories. Mr. Hanky did not fit anymore. So the show used cancel culture to comment on itself while getting rid of him. The episode was about celebrities getting canceled, but it was also about the show canceling its own character. The show was admitting Mr. Hanky had been around too long. Fans were divided on the decision. Some thought it was brilliant. The show used its own rules to get rid of a character that didn't fit anymore. It knew what it was doing, and it was funny. Other fans were sad to see Mr. Hanky go. He was part of South Park's history.
He was from when the show was simpler and more focused on shock humor. Getting rid of him felt like losing part of what made the show special. A third group of fans thought the whole thing was unnecessary. Mr. Hanky could have just stopped appearing without a big farewell episode. The show could have quietly phased him out. Instead, it made a spectacle of his removal. That felt mean-spirited to some people. The episode also made people wonder about whether Mr. Hanky could ever come back. The character left South Park. He went somewhere else. The show did not kill him. He is still alive in the world, somewhere. Does that mean he could return in a future episode? Or is he gone for good? The show has brought characters back after getting rid of them before, but Mr. Hanky leaving felt more permanent than usual. The town rejected him completely. Even Kyle gave up on him. There's no way back unless the show does a comeback story. And comeback stories don't really fit Mr. Hanky. He is a piece of poo who sings songs. He is not complex enough for a redemption story. There's also the question of what getting rid of Mr. Hanky says about how the show sees its own history. The show has changed a lot since 1997. It used to depend on shocking jokes and gross stuff. Mr. Hanky was the most gross out you could get. A talking piece of poo was shocking in 1997. By 2018, it was just weird. The show had grown past that kind of humor. So getting rid of Mr. Hanky was the show admitting it had grown past something it created. Some fans see this as the show growing up. The show is okay with dropping stuff that doesn't work anymore. Other fans think the show lost what made it special. Mr. Hanky was pure South Park. Getting rid of him meant losing part of what made the show different. Looking at Mr. Hanky's disappearance now, it's a turning point for the show. The show admitted not everything from the past needs to stick around. Some jokes get old. Some characters stop being funny. Mr. Hanky was one of those characters. He worked for 20 years. Then he did not. The show handled it by kicking him out in an episode about cancel culture that was also about the show itself. Whether he comes back depends on if the show thinks he's been gone long enough. But for now, Mr. Hanky is gone. His story ended on a train leaving town, and South Park continues without him. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have PC Principal's Real Power and Backstory. Section 9. PC. Principal's Real Power and Backstory. PC Principal showed up in Season 19 and immediately changed everything about South Park Elementary. He replaced Principal Victoria, who had run the school for 18 seasons. PC Principal was loud, he was aggressive, he was obsessed with political correctness, he called people out for microaggressions, he beat up Cartman for using the wrong language, he fired teachers who did not agree with his methods. In just one episode, he completely took over the school. But here's the mystery. How did PC Principal get this job? Where did he come from? And why is he so much stronger and more violent than a normal school principal should be? The show answered some questions later, but left other stuff unexplained. PC Principal has a history that ties to a secret group, and he can fight way better than a principal should be able to. PC Principal first appeared in Season 19, Episode 1, titled Stunning and Brave. The episode started with him already working as the new principal. He walked into the school like he owned it. He gathered everyone in the gym for an assembly. He introduced himself by screaming about social justice and equality. He made it clear he would not tolerate any offensive language or behavior. The students were confused. The teachers were scared. Then Cartman tested him. Cartman made a joke about Caitlyn Jenner. PC Principal grabbed Cartman and beat him up in front of everyone. He threw Cartman around the gym. He smashed him into the floor. This wasn't a normal punishment. This was straight up assault. But nobody stopped him. The school just accepted this is how it is now. The show never told us how PC Principal got the job. Principal Victoria got fired between seasons without us seeing it. The school board brought in PC Principal to replace her. But we never saw how he got hired. We never saw who made the decision. PC Principal just showed up with complete power. This is weird for South Park. The show usually shows us how big changes happen, but PC Principal showing up was treated like it was already settled. He had power right away. Nobody fought back. Everyone just accepted him. That means something bigger was happening in the background. Season 19 showed us PC Principal wasn't working by himself. He was part of a network called the PC Bros. These were college fraternity brothers who all believed in extreme political correctness. They went around the country forcing their views on people. They got jobs with power. They worked together to spread their agenda. PC Principal would call his fraternity brothers when he needed backup. They would show up and help him handle problems. In Season 19, Episode 4, titled You're Not Yelping, PC Principal throws a party and invites his PC bros. They all look like him. Same sunglasses, same build, same aggressive personality. They drink beer and talk about crushing people who use offensive language. This episode proved PC Principal was part of a bigger group. He was not just one guy. He was like a soldier in an army. But the show went even deeper in Season 19, Episode 10, titled PC Principal, Final Justice. This episode showed the PC Bros were part of an even bigger conspiracy. They were being manipulated by ads. Literal advertisements that had become sentient and were trying to take over the world. The ads used political correctness to split people up and get power. PC Principal and his frat brothers were being used. They thought they were fighting for justice. Really, they were helping ads take over. When PC Principal learned the truth, he felt betrayed. He realized he had been used. But he also realized he was in too deep to walk away. The episode ended with PC Principal staying at the school even after finding out about the conspiracy. He decided to keep his job even though he knew he'd been manipulated from the start. This history raises questions the show never really answered. First question, is PC Principal still connected to the PC Bros? He stopped calling them after Season 19. They stopped appearing in episodes. But the show never said the fraternity broke up. They might still be out there. PC Principal might still talk to them when we don't see it. Second question, how much does PC Principal remember about the ad conspiracy? The show usually makes characters forget stuff between seasons. Characters forget major revelations all the time. Does PC Principal still know he was manipulated, or did he forget like everyone else? Third question, where did PC Principal get his fighting skills? The show has never told us why a principal can beat up kids and adults so easily. He's not just strong, he's trained. He moves like someone who knows how to fight. The show treats this as normal, but it is not normal. How strong PC Principal is one of the weirdest things about him. He has beaten up Cartman multiple times. He has fought adults and won. In Season 20, Episode 4, titled Wieners Out, PC Principal gets into a fight with other men and dominates them. He is fast and brutal. He doesn't fight like a normal person. He fights like someone who was trained to hurt people. Where did he learn this? Was it part of his fraternity training? Do the PC Bros teach fighting skills on top of political correctness? The show has never addressed this. It just shows PC Principal being super strong without telling us why. Some fans think PC Principal might have a military background. He has the discipline. He has the aggression. He's in great shape. Maybe he was a soldier before he became an educator. Maybe the PC Bros recruit former soldiers who want something new to do. This would explain why he can fight and why he leads like a dictator. But the show has never confirmed this. It's just a theory based on how PC Principal acts and moves. Other fans think PC Principal's strength is just a joke. The show exaggerates everything. Having a principal who can beat people up is funny. There doesn't need to be a bigger reason. Both ways of seeing it work depending on how seriously you take the show's rules. Then there is the question of what happened to Principal Victoria. She ran the school for 18 seasons. She was kind and reasonable. She tried to help the kids. Then she got fired without us seeing it, and PC Principal replaced her. The show finally told us why she got fired. In Season 19, Episode 7, titled Naughty Ninjas, we find out Victoria got fired for not being politically correct enough. The school board wanted someone who would enforce new rules. Victoria would not do it. So they brought in PC Principal, who would. But this brings up another question. Who is on the school board? Who made this decision? The show has never shown us who's on the school board. We do not know who they are or what their agenda is. They can fire popular principals and hire violent replacements, but we never see who they are. Looking at PC Principal now, he's one of the weirdest ongoing mysteries in South Park. He showed up with power and violence and a secret plan. The show explains some of his history with the PC Bros and the ad conspiracy, but it left other parts unexplained. We do not know where he got his combat training. We do not know if he is still connected to his fraternity. We don't know who actually hired him or why they wanted him. PC Principal has been at the school for 10 seasons. He's a permanent part of the show now, but where he came from is still unclear. He's more than just a principal. He's something else. And the show has never told us what that something else actually is. Up next is the cosmic link between Mysterion and Cthulhu. Section 10. The cosmic link between Mysterion and Cthulhu. The Coon and Friends trilogy in Season 14 introduced Cthulhu to South Park's world. Cthulhu is a cosmic horror creature from H.P. Lovecraft stories. It's an ancient god that humans can't understand. In South Park, Cthulhu appeared as a giant monster that could destroy cities and kill thousands of people. Cartman teamed up with it. Together, they went on a rampage across the world. But the really interesting part is how this story connected to Kenny's curse. The show showed that Kenny being able to die and come back is connected to cosmic powers. Cthulhu recognized Kenny. It recognized him as something important. This connected Kenny's curse to the bigger world of ancient gods and supernatural stuff. But the show never really explained what that connection means or how deep it is. The Cthulhu arc happened across 3 episodes in Season 14. The first episode was The Coon. It introduced the superhero team Coon and Friends. Cartman was the Coon, the other kids had different superhero identities. They were trying to help people and get famous.
But they ended up fighting each other instead of fighting crime.
The episode was mostly setting up what happened next. The second episode was Coon 2: Hindsight. It continued the team drama and introduced Mysterion's real identity as Kenny. The third episode was Mysterion Rises. This is where Cthulhu showed up and everything changed. A cult was trying to summon Cthulhu to destroy the world. They succeeded. Cthulhu emerged from the ocean as a massive creature. It started walking towards South Park, crushing everything in its path. Kenny, as Mysterion, tried to stop Cthulhu. He went to confront it alone. He stood in front of this massive cosmic being and demanded it stop destroying things. Cthulhu looked down at him. This was the moment that changed everything. Cthulhu did not attack Kenny. It did not ignore him like it ignored everyone else. It recognized him. The show made it clear, with what we saw and heard, that Cthulhu knew who Kenny was, or what Kenny was. Kenny asked Cthulhu to remove his curse. He wanted to be free of dying and coming back forever. He explained that he was tired of the cycle. He wanted Cthulhu to end it. Cthulhu stared at him for a long moment. Then it turned away without helping. It did not explain anything. It just acknowledged Kenny existed and moved on. This proved Kenny's curse works on a cosmic level. It's not just some local spell from a cult. It's connected to forces as old and powerful as Cthulhu. But then Cartman showed up and ruined everything. Cartman made a deal with Cthulhu somehow. He convinced Cthulhu to team up with him and do what he wanted. Together, they went around destroying things Cartman did not like. They killed Justin Bieber on live television. They destroyed Whole Foods stores. They attacked hippies and people Cartman considered annoying. Cthulhu became Cartman's personal tool for revenge. This was supposed to be funny. A giant cosmic horror god taking orders from a fat 8-year-old kid. But it also brought up some serious questions. Why did Cthulhu listen to Cartman at all? Cthulhu isn't supposed to care about what humans want. It doesn't care about human problems or small grudges. Yet it teamed up with Cartman and followed his suggestions. The show never explained this. It just happened because the story needed it. Kenny eventually stopped Cthulhu by calling on another cult for help. The cult that gave Kenny his immortality curse was a cult of Cthulhu. But there was also a competing cult in South Park. This other cult worshipped different cosmic powers and did different rituals. Kenny convinced them to help him stop Cthulhu. They did a ritual that sent Cthulhu back to its own dimension. Cthulhu vanished in a flash of light. The arc ended. Cartman lost his cosmic buddy. The world was saved from destruction. But the show never talked about what this all meant. Kenny proved he's actually connected to cosmic level powers. He can deal with beings like Cthulhu as an equal. He can ask cults that worship ancient gods for help, and they'll listen. This makes Kenny's curse way bigger than just not being able to die. It makes him part of something cosmic that goes across universes. The show has never done anything with this. After the Coon and Friends trilogy ended, Cthulhu completely disappeared from South Park. The cult that cursed Kenny has never shown up again. The cosmic connections from Season 14 have never been mentioned again. It's like the show showed us something huge and then just walked away and never came back. Kenny still dies and comes back in later episodes, but the show treats it as a joke again. It doesn't mention Cthulhu. It doesn't mention the cosmic part of the curse. The connection is still real in the story. The show just doesn't use it or do anything with it. This makes fans ask questions they've been asking for years without getting answers. First question, is Kenny connected to other cosmic beings besides Cthulhu? If Cthulhu recognized him immediately, do other ancient gods know about him too? Are there other cosmic beings watching Kenny? Second question, what would happen if Kenny died in front of Cthulhu? Would he still come back? Or does Cthulhu have the power to actually kill Kenny permanently and end the curse? Third question, is Kenny meant to do something bigger? Cthulhu recognized him for a reason. Does Kenny have something he's supposed to do in some cosmic plan we haven't seen yet? The show hasn't answered any of these. It brought up the cosmic stuff and then totally ignored it. Some fans think the Cthulhu arc was just a one-time thing. The writers wanted to do a cosmic horror story for 3 episodes. They connected it to Kenny's curse because it fit, but they never planned to make it a permanent part of who Kenny is. It was just a cool idea for a short story. Other fans think the cosmic connection is still there, waiting to be used. Maybe the show will bring back Cthulhu in a future season. Maybe it will explore Kenny's curse more deeply and finally reveal his cosmic purpose. Both theories are possible. The show could go either way. Right now, the cosmic connection is real in the story, but doesn't do anything. Then there's the question of whether Kenny even realizes how important he is. He confronted Cthulhu face to face. He saw a cosmic being acknowledge him as something special. He must realize his curse is bigger and more important than he thought. But the show has never shown Kenny doing anything about what he knows. He doesn't look into cosmic stuff. He doesn't try to contact other cults. He doesn't prepare for some cosmic destiny he might have. He just goes to school and hangs out with his friends like a normal kid. Either Kenny doesn't care about the cosmic stuff, or he's waiting for it to matter again. The show has not told us which one is true. Looking at the Cthulhu arc now, it's the biggest mischance for making Kenny more than just the kid who dies. The show showed Kenny is connected to cosmic forces humans can't understand. It showed him dealing with an ancient god as an equal. It proved his curse isn't just random magic or a joke. It's part of something huge and old that we can't understand that goes across dimensions. Then the show just dropped it and moved on. Fans who want to understand Kenny's whole curse only have pieces. We know Cthulhu is involved somehow. We know cosmic forces beyond our world are involved. We know Kenny is recognized by beings that shouldn't care about humans. But we do not know why, or what it means, or where it leads. The show gave us a peek at something huge, and then closed the curtain. And it stayed closed for over 10 years. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Wendy Testaberger's Social Gravity. Section 11. Wendy Testaberger's Social Gravity. Wendy Testaberger is not the main character of South Park. She is not part of the core group of boys. She does not get as much screen time as Stan, Kyle, Cartman, or Kenny. But when Wendy shows up in an episode, things change. She makes the plot move forward. She makes things happen. She affects other characters in ways that last. There's a pattern where Wendy episodes feel more important than other side character episodes. Fans noticed this and started calling it Wendy's social gravity. The idea is Wendy pulls the story to her even when she's not the main focus. She has weight in the story. She matters more than how much she's actually on screen. But the show has never explained why Wendy is like this or what it means. Wendy started as Stan's girlfriend in the early seasons. She was smart and responsible. She stood up for what she believed in. She was basically the kid with morals when the boys were being dumb. The show used her as the voice of reason. When the boys did something dumb, Wendy would point out why it was dumb. She was the responsible one. But over time, Wendy became more than just the smart girl. She became someone who could change whole stories. In Season 12, Episode 8, titled The List, Wendy discovered the girls made a fake list ranking the boys by looks. The list was rigged to manipulate social dynamics at school. Wendy exposed the conspiracy. She burned down the school in the process. This episode showed Wendy would go further than most characters to fight things that are wrong. She did not just complain, she took action. And her actions had consequences. Another major Wendy episode was Season 16, Episode 14, titled Obama Wins. Wendy ran for student body president. She campaigned on actual policies. She wanted to improve the school. Her opponent was just popular, but had no real ideas. Wendy lost the election because the other students did not care about policies. They voted based on popularity. This crushed Wendy. She realized most people do not care about doing the right thing. They care about fitting in and being liked. The episode showed Wendy learning a hard lesson about how the world works, but it also showed she could run a real campaign and understand politics. She was thinking on a higher level than the other kids. Then there is the fight episode. That episode is one of the most talked about Wendy episodes. Cartman kept making jokes about breast cancer during a presentation. Wendy told him to stop. He kept going. Wendy challenged him to a fight after school. Cartman spent the whole episode trying to avoid the fight. He was terrified of Wendy. When the fight finally happened, Wendy destroyed him. She beat Cartman bloody. She did not hold back. She punched him in the face over and over until he was crying and begging her to stop. Then she kept going. The fight was brutal and one-sided. Cartman never made breast cancer jokes again after that. This episode proved Wendy could back up what she said with action. She was not just smart, she was tough. She could fight better than any of the boys. These episodes show a pattern. Wendy does not mess around. When she commits to something, she goes all the way. She burns down schools, she beats people unconscious, she runs political campaigns, she exposes conspiracies. Most side characters show up for one joke and then disappear. Wendy shows up and changes things. Her episodes matter. They deal with real problems like corruption, sexism, and unfairness. The show takes Wendy more seriously than most other characters. Even when the show makes fun of her, it respects her by letting her get stuff done and affect the story. Fans started noticing this and came up with the social gravity theory. The theory says Wendy represents something the show needs. She's the character who can point out problems without people thinking she's crazy or stupid. When Kyle points out problems, people ignore him because he's always doing that. When Wendy points out problems, people listen because she only does it when it matters. She doesn't complain about everything. She only speaks up when something really matters. This makes what she says matter more. When Wendy says something is wrong, the show treats it like it's actually wrong. Not just annoying, actually wrong. This makes interesting stuff happen when Wendy deals with the main characters. Stan respects her opinion even when he disagrees with her. Kyle sees her as an ally in fighting injustice. Cartman fears her because she is the only person who can physically dominate him. Kenny does not interact with her much, but he does not dismiss her either. Wendy has earned respect from all of them by what she's done. She's not just another voice, she's someone who matters. And the show shows this by giving her important episodes about serious stuff. But here's the mystery. Why does Wendy have this when other smart girl characters don't? BB is smart, but she doesn't affect stories like Wendy does. Red is capable, but she barely gets episodes. Heidi had a big storyline later, but it was mostly about her and Cartman. She didn't move stories forward on her own like Wendy does. What makes Wendy special? The show has never told us. Wendy just has gravity. She pulls things to her. When she's in an episode, that episode becomes about whatever she cares about. Even if she's not the main character, her being there changes the feel and direction. Some fans think Wendy is like the show's conscience. South Park makes fun of everything and everyone. It attacks every position and mocks every belief. But Wendy is the character who says some things actually matter. She draws lines. She says this is wrong, and this needs to stop. The show lets her do this without totally making her look stupid. Yes, the show makes fun of her sometimes. Yes, she fails sometimes. But she's also right sometimes. And when she's right, the show admits it. That makes her different from characters who are always wrong or always getting made fun of. Other fans think Wendy's gravity comes from her being the most capable kid in the show. She gets stuff done. When Wendy sets a goal, she usually does it. She beat Cartman, she exposed the List conspiracy, she ran a real campaign. She doesn't just talk, she acts. And what she does has results. Most characters in South Park fail all the time. They try stuff and fail in funny ways. Wendy tries stuff and succeeds in serious ways. The show needs someone who can actually get stuff done or nothing would ever happen. Wendy does that job for the kids. Then there is the question of Wendy's relationship with Stan. They date on and off throughout the series. When they're together, Wendy pushes Stan to be better. She makes him think about stuff. She calls him out when he is being stupid. Stan respects this, even though it annoys him sometimes. When they break up, Stan usually realizes he messed up. Wendy moves on easy, while Stan has a hard time. This shows Wendy has power in the relationship. She doesn't need Stan. Stan needs her more. The show has never really looked into what this means, but it adds to Wendy's gravity. She matters to Stan in ways other characters don't. Looking at Wendy's role in the show now, it's clear she has a special place. She's not a main character, but she's more than a side character. She's the person who makes things happen when she shows up. She has more influence than how much she's actually on screen. The show has never explained why Wendy is like this. It just treats it as fact. Wendy matters. Wendy has gravity. When she shows up, pay attention because something important is about to happen. That's the pattern fans have noticed, and it's been true for over 20 seasons. Moving on, we have the South Park School Timeline. Section 12, the South Park School Timeline. The kids in South Park have been in 4th grade for over 25 years. They do not age. They do not move up to 5th grade. Every new school year starts, and they are still in the same classroom with the same teacher. This is normal for cartoons. The Simpsons has kept Bart in 4th grade since 1989. But South Park has made it confusing by sometimes showing time passing and sometimes ignoring it. The show mentions past events. Characters remember things that happened years ago in real life. But the kids stay the same age. The timeline doesn't make sense when you try to follow it. This makes you wonder how time actually works in South Park. Does time pass normally and the kids just don't age? Or does time loop and reset? Or is the show just ignoring continuity because it's a cartoon? The early seasons did not worry about this at all. Each episode stood alone. The kids were always in 4th grade, nobody questioned it. This was normal for cartoons. You accept that cartoon characters do not age. But then South Park started doing serialized seasons in season 19 and 20. Episodes connected to each other. Time passed between episodes. Weeks and months went by within the story. Characters mentioned stuff from earlier in the season. This made it seem like time was moving forward normally. But the kids were still in 4th grade at the end. They didn't age, even though time clearly passed. Then the show did something even stranger. In season 25, the show jumped forward in time for those specials. These were movie-length episodes set 40 years later. The kids were adults. They had jobs and families and gray hair. The specials showed what everyone became as adults. Then at the end, time reset. The kids went back to 4th grade. The future was gone. But the show proved it could age the characters if it wanted. It just doesn't most of the time. This made people wonder if that future is still real in the story, or if it was totally erased. The school also creates time problems. South Park Elementary has had multiple teachers over the years. Mr. Garrison taught the class for many seasons. Then he became president and left. The school hired a new teacher. Then Garrison came back and started teaching again. But if time doesn't pass, how did Garrison leave and come back? How did he run for president and be president if the kids are still the same age? The show wants adults to change while keeping the kids the same. This makes contradictions that can't be fixed without breaking something. Then there is the question of what grade the kids were in before 4th grade. The show has flashbacks to when the kids were younger. We see them in preschool. We see them as babies. We see their parents when they were young. These flashbacks make it seem like time moved normally in the past. The kids grew from babies to 4th graders, but then they stopped aging when the show started. Why? What changed? The show has never explained this. It just treats 4th grade as where the kids are stuck now. The kids also talk about growing up in some episodes. They talk about getting older, they worry about puberty, they mention future plans. In Season 7, Episode 14, titled Raisins, the boys deal with heartbreak and growing up. Stan gets depressed about losing Wendy. The episode treats this as part of getting older and feeling real emotions. But if the kids never actually get older, these moments don't make sense. They're growing emotionally without aging. They're learning about being mature while staying in 4th grade forever. The show wants emotional growth without physical aging or time passing. Fans have tried to create timelines that make sense. They track when episodes happen based on holidays and events mentioned. They try to figure out how much time passes between seasons. But it never makes sense. Some episodes happen in the same week, others jump months forward. The show doesn't follow a consistent calendar. It uses whatever timeline works for that episode. This makes a timeline that makes sense impossible. You can make up theories, but they'll always have holes because the show contradicts itself all the time. One popular theory is the kids are stuck in a time loop. Every school year, they do 4th grade again. They remember some stuff, but forget other stuff. This would explain why they mention past stuff, but never age. They're literally doing the same year over and over with small changes. Another theory is South Park exists outside normal time. The town has its own rules. Time passes for adults, but not kids. Or time passes differently for different characters. This would explain why adults age and change jobs, while kids stay the same.
A third theory is the whole show is just a cartoon and none of this matters. The writers do whatever they want without worrying about it making sense. This is probably the real answer, but it's not satisfying for fans who want the world to make sense. The post-COVID specials added another layer to this mystery. The future showed the kids as adults. But then that future was stopped from happening. Does that mean the future doesn't exist anymore? Or does it still exist as a possible future? The specials ended with the kids making different choices to avoid the bad future. But if they're still in 4th grade, when do they make those choices? When do they grow up and face those problems? The show created a paradox by showing a future and then going back to the present without explaining how they connect. There's also the question of how long 4th grade actually lasts in South Park. In real time, the kids have been in 4th grade since 1997. That is over 25 years. In the show's time, multiple school years have passed. We see summer breaks, we see holidays repeat, we see school years end and begin again. So the kids have been in 4th grade for multiple years, even in the show's timeline. This is impossible unless they're failing 4th grade over and over. Or unless the school just keeps them in 4th grade no matter what. The show has never addressed this. Looking at the South Park school timeline now, it's clear the show doesn't care about making time work logically. It wants the freedom to age characters when it helps the story, and freeze them when it doesn't. The kids stay in 4th grade because that's how the show works, but time still passes around them. Adults age. The world changes. Events happen and matter. The kids just exist in a bubble where they experience time emotionally, but not physically. This makes a weird situation where the show remembers stuff and doesn't remember stuff at the same time. Fans who want a clear timeline will never get one. The show is made to resist timelines. It uses whatever version of time works best for each episode. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up is the fate of Ike Broflovsky's biological family. Section 13. The fate of Ike Broflovsky's biological family. Ike Broflovsky is Kyle's adopted little brother. He was born in Canada. The Broflovskys adopted him when he was a baby. The show revealed this in Season 1, Episode 4, titled Starvin' Marvin. Kyle found out Ike was adopted and had to deal with the truth that his brother came from a different family. But the show never told us what happened to Ike's biological parents. Why did they give him up? Are they still alive? Do they know where Ike is? The show has dropped hints about Ike's origins over the years, but never gave a complete answer. This makes you wonder about Ike's real family, and if they'll ever show up. It also makes you wonder how adoption works in South Park, and why Canadian babies end up in American families. The adoption reveal happened early in the series. Kyle discovered Ike was from Canada through his parents. Gerald and Sheila Broflovsky told Kyle they adopted Ike because they wanted another child. They went through an adoption agency and got matched with a Canadian baby. Kyle was upset at first. He thought Ike being adopted meant he was not really his brother. But by the end of the episode, Kyle accepted that family is about love, not blood. The show made it emotional and funny at the same time. This became a huge part of who Kyle and Ike are. Kyle is the protective older brother, even though they are not biologically related. Ike is the little brother who looks up to Kyle despite coming from a different family. But the show didn't answer some big questions. Why did Ike's biological parents give him up for adoption? Were they too young to raise a child? Were they too poor? Did they have a crisis that forced them to make that choice? The show never said. We know Ike was born in Canada. We know he was adopted as a baby. Everything else is blank. The show has never shown Ike's biological parents. It has never mentioned their names. It has never explained what happened to them after the adoption. They're just a missing piece in Ike's history. A mystery that's always there, even though the show barely talks about it. The show did look into Ike being Canadian in later episodes. In Season 7, Episode 15, titled It's Christmas in Canada, the entire Broflovsky family traveled to Canada. They went because the Canadian government changed adoption laws. The new law said all adopted Canadian children had to be returned to Canada. Soldiers came to take Ike away from the Broflovskys. Gerald and Sheila fought back, but the soldiers took Ike anyway.
The family had to go to Canada to get him back. They traveled across the country. They met the new Canadian Prime Minister who had passed the law. They discovered the Prime Minister was insane and had taken over the government. Kyle and the others defeated him and got Ike back. The episode ended with everything returning to normal. Ike stayed with the Broflovskis. The adoption was secure again. But here's what the episode didn't talk about. Where were Ike's biological parents during all of this? If Canada was reclaiming adopted children, why did Ike's birth parents not show up? Did they not know about the law? Did they not care? Did they try to find Ike and fail? The show never mentioned them. The entire episode was about the Broflovskis fighting to keep Ike. The biological parents weren't there at all. This means one of two things. Either Ike's biological parents are dead or can't take care of him. Or they gave him up because they wanted to and don't care about getting him back. Both are sad, but the show hasn't said which one is true. Then there is the question of whether Ike knows about his biological parents. Does he wonder about them? Does he want to meet them someday? The show has never shown Ike asking these questions. He seems happy with the Broflovskis. He calls Gerald and Sheila his parents. He calls Kyle his brother. He doesn't act like he's missing something or curious about where he came from. But Ike is still very young. He might not understand what adoption means yet. When he gets older, he might start asking questions. The show could do an episode about Ike searching for his birth parents. But they haven't done that episode yet. And after 25 seasons, they might never do it. Fans have come up with theories to fill in what's missing. Most fans think Ike's biological parents died. This would explain why they never show up and why Ike got adopted. Maybe they died in an accident. Maybe they died from illness. Maybe they were killed. The show has never suggested this, but it makes sense with what we know. If Ike's parents were dead, there'd be no reason for the show to mention them. The adoption would be permanent and simple. Another theory is that Ike's parents were too poor to raise him. Canada is portrayed as weird and chaotic in South Park. Maybe Ike's parents lived in poverty and gave him up hoping he would have a better life in America. This would be sad, but realistic. It would also explain why they haven't tried to contact him. They might think he is better off without them. A darker theory is Ike was taken from his parents when they didn't want to give him up. The Canadian government in South Park is shown as corrupt and incompetent. Maybe they took babies from families and let them get adopted by people in other countries. Maybe Ike's parents are still in Canada searching for their missing son. Maybe they do not even know he is alive. This theory makes sense because Canada tried to take Ike back in the Christmas episode. If the government was willing to forcibly take him back, maybe they forcibly took him away in the first place. But this is just guessing. The show has never hinted anything this dark happened to Ike. There is also the question of whether Ike has siblings. If his biological parents are alive and stayed together, they might have had other children. Ike could have brothers or sisters in Canada who do not know he exists. Or he could have siblings who were also adopted and placed in different families. The show has never looked into this. Ike is treated like he has no siblings before Kyle. But that might not be true. His biological family could be big and complicated. We just don't know because the show won't tell us. The show has also never talked about how the adoption affected Gerald and Sheila. Did they ever meet Ike's biological parents? Did they know anything about them? Were they given information about Ike's medical history or family background? Adoption agencies usually give some information to adoptive parents. But South Park has never shown if the Broflovskis got any details about where Ike came from. They might know more than Kyle does. Or they might know nothing at all. The show doesn't make this clear. Looking at Ike's biological family now, it's clear the show thinks this story is over. Ike is a Broflovski. His past does not matter to the story. The show used the adoption reveal for one emotional episode and then moved on. Ike's biological parents are just a big question mark in the background. They're part of his past, but not part of his life. Whether they're alive or dead, whether they miss him or forgot him, whether they'll ever show up is completely unknown. The mystery stays unsolved because the show doesn't care about solving it. Ike's real family is the Broflovskis. Everything before that doesn't matter. Moving on to Canada's lore hierarchy. Section 14, Canada's lore hierarchy. Canada in South Park isn't like real Canada. It works differently. The people look different, the geography works differently, the government operates on a completely separate system. When characters cross from America into Canada, it feels like they're going to a different dimension. Canadians have flapping heads when they talk. They move in strange, jerky ways. Their cities look cartoonish and simple compared to American cities. The show has created a whole backstory around Canada being weird and messed up, But it's never explained why Canada is like this. Is Canada actually different in the South Park world, or is this just how Americans see Canada?
The mystery is whether Canada's weirdness is real or just how people see it. And if it is real, what makes Canada so different from everywhere else? Canada first appeared in Season 2, Episode 1, titled Terrence and Philip in Not Without My Anus. This was the famous April Fool's episode that made fans wait to learn about Cartman's father. The entire episode took place in Canada. It followed Terrence and Philip as they saved Canada from Saddam Hussein, who had taken over the country. The episode showed that Canadians look and act totally different than Americans. Their heads flap up and down when they talk, like mouths opening and closing. They have beady little eyes that barely move. They move in a crude animation style that looks cheaper than the rest of the show. This was supposed to be a joke about Canadian TV looking cheaper than American TV. The creators were making fun of the idea that Canadian shows looked worse and had less money, but it became permanent in the show's story. From then on, all Canadians in South Park looked and moved like this in every episode. The joke became how the show actually shows a whole country. The show added to Canada's backstory in later episodes with more and more weird details. We learned Canada has a queen. She lives in a castle somewhere in the wilderness.
She rules over the entire country, in theory.
But Canada also has a prime minister who seems to have more actual power than the queen does. The government structure doesn't make sense when you try to figure it out. The show has shown multiple prime ministers over the years with completely different personalities. Some were reasonable leaders trying to help their people, others were insane dictators passing bizarre laws for no reason. The Canadian government changes all the time between episodes. It's never stable or consistent. One episode, the Prime Minister is trying to help people and negotiate with other countries. The next episode, the Prime Minister is passing insane laws and oppressing citizens. There's no pattern for how Canada is run or who's in charge. Canada's geography is also totally weird and impossible. The show has shown Canada with deserts, forests, cities, and frozen wastelands all close together. Characters can walk from one climate to another in just minutes. The map doesn't follow real Canadian geography at all. In the episode It's Christmas in Canada, the boys traveled across the entire country in what seemed like a day or two on foot. They went through multiple areas that should be thousands of miles apart. But in South Park's version of Canada, everything is squished into a small area. The country is both huge and tiny at the same time. The show also gave Canada weird cultural rules that don't match real life. Canadians are obsessed with saying sorry for everything. They apologize constantly, even when it is not their fault. They say sorry for things other people did to them. They're so polite, they're pushovers who can't stand up for themselves. But they also have a dark, violent side. When Canadians get angry, they become violent and destructive without warning. The show uses both sides of the stereotype for comedy. Canadians are nice and friendly until they snap. Then they are dangerous and uncontrollable. This makes a culture that feels unstable and unpredictable. You never know which version of Canadians you'll get, the polite one or the violent one. Both are in the same people. Then there's the bigger question of why Canadians look physically different. The flapping heads aren't just an animation choice or visual trick. They're treated as real in the show's world. American characters notice right away when someone is Canadian because of how they look and move. They mention it, they point it out. This means Canadians are actually physically different from Americans. But why? What makes Canadians' bodies different from Americans' bodies? The show has never explained this at all. Are Canadians a different species that evolved on their own? Did something in the environment mutate them? Are they cursed by ancient magic? Or did they just naturally evolve to have flapping heads over thousands of years? The show treats it as totally normal without ever explaining why. The most detailed Canada episode was that one. This episode showed a Canadian royal wedding in detail. The Princess of Canada was getting married to a prince, but she was kidnapped right before the ceremony by an unknown villain. Ike had to save her because he was Canadian and felt responsible. The episode showed that Canada has a weird tradition where the princess gives her arm to her new husband as a wedding gift. She actually gives him her arm. She cuts it off with a saw and hands him the cut-off limb. This is treated as a totally normal Canadian tradition that everyone accepts. Nobody in Canada questions it. The episode also showed Canadians worship the princess and treat the royal family like gods. The entire country stops everything to watch royal events on television. This suggests Canada is more of a monarchy than a democracy, even though they have a prime minister. Fans have tried to explain why Canada is so different in South Park with different theories. The most popular theory is Canada represents how clueless Americans see their neighbor to the north. Americans don't really know anything about Canada besides basic stereotypes. They know simple ideas: polite people, cold weather, Mounties on horses, hockey players. The show takes these stereotypes and makes them extreme to create a cartoon version of Canada. This would explain why Canada doesn't follow normal rules or logic. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be a joke about Americans being ignorant about other countries. Another theory is Canada is actually cursed or magical in South Park's world. Something happened to Canada in the past that made it weird. Maybe an ancient spell. Maybe a government experiment. Maybe aliens. The show has hinted Canada is wrong on a cosmic level, but never said what actually caused it. There's also the question of whether Canadians know they're different from everyone else. Do they realize they look and act weird compared to Americans? Do they care about being different? The show has never talked about this directly. Canadians in South Park act like everything about their country is totally normal. They don't mention their flapping heads. They don't acknowledge their country works on weird rules. Either they really don't know they're weird, or they know and just don't care what outsiders think. Both options fit what the show has shown us.
The show purposely leaves it unclear.
Then there's the wall situation that adds another layer. In season 19, the show dealt with immigration and border security. The American characters wanted to build a wall to keep Canadians out of America. But the episode revealed Canada had already built a wall to keep Americans out of Canada. The Canadian wall was bigger and more secure. This made a situation where both countries were trying to keep away from each other. The episode made it funny, but also suggested Canada and America are more alike than either wants to admit. Both countries are paranoid about outsiders. Both think they're better than the other. Both build walls instead of talking. Looking at Canada's lore now, it's clear the show uses Canada as a mirror to show America what it looks like. Canada is weird and messed up in the show. But so is America when you really look. The difference is, America doesn't realize how weird it looks to outsiders. Canada embraces being weird, openly. This makes Canada both a joke and a way of commenting on stuff at the same time. The show makes fun of Canada all the time, with flapping heads and weird customs, but it also uses Canada to make deeper points about American culture and politics. The flapping heads and weird traditions are funny on the surface, but they also show how every country looks strange to outsiders. The mystery of why Canada is like this might not have a real answer, because asking the question is the point. Canada is weird because that's how Americans see it. And America is weird because that's how Canadians see it. Both are right and wrong at the same time. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Up next is Randy Marsh's transformations.
Section 15.
Randy Marsh's transformations. Randy Marsh started the series as a geologist. He worked at the United States Geological Survey. He wore a suit, he went to an office, he had a normal, boring job. But over 25 seasons, Randy changed jobs multiple times. He became a celebrity chef, he started a weed farm, he invented new products, he became an activist for various causes. Each change happened suddenly, with no real explanation. Randy would be one thing in one episode and something totally different in the next. The show never talked about why Randy keeps changing or how he can afford to switch jobs so easily. This makes you wonder who Randy actually is. Is he looking for meaning? Is he having a midlife crisis that never ends? Or is Randy just the character the show uses to talk about whatever is trendy right now? Randy was a steady character in the early seasons. He was Stan's dad. He worked as a geologist. He loved his family. He got drunk sometimes and did stupid things, but he was mostly responsible. The show used Randy for parent stories. He was the average American dad, trying his best and failing in funny ways. This version of Randy lasted about 10 seasons. Then something changed. The show started giving Randy more screen time. It started making him the main character instead of just Stan's dad. And as Randy got more focus, he got weirder. The change really started around season 18. Randy started getting into trends. He opened a Blockbuster video store after Blockbuster went out of business. He became obsessed with the band Lorde. He started a food review blog. Each episode, Randy grabbed onto something new and made it his whole personality. He would go all in on whatever the trend was. Then, the next episode, he'd drop it and move on to something else. The show made this funny. Randy was the guy who couldn't stick to anything. He jumped from obsession to obsession without learning or growing. Then, in season 22, Randy bought a farm and started growing weed. This became Tegrity Farms.
Unlike his other projects, Tegrity Farms stuck around. Randy became a weed farmer for several seasons. He moved his whole family out of South Park and onto the farm. He made weed his identity. He fought against corporations trying to take over the cannabis industry. He expanded his business to sell different strains and products. Tegrity Farms became the center of multiple storylines. This was the first time Randy stuck with something long-term since his geologist job. But even with Tegrity Farms, Randy kept changing. He would switch from selling weed to selling other stuff. He would get involved in new trends while running the farm. The farm stayed the same, but Randy himself stayed unstable. The show never explained why Randy is like this. Other characters have consistent personalities. Stan is the normal kid. Cartman is evil. Kyle is moral. Kenny dies. But Randy doesn't have one defining trait anymore. He used to be the drunk dad who embarrassed his son. Now he's whatever the episode needs him to be. He's an activist when the show wants to make fun of activism. He's a businessman when the show wants to make fun of capitalism. He's a conspiracy theorist when the show wants to make fun of conspiracy theories. Randy became a blank slate the writers could use for any cultural commentary. This makes him flexible, but also inconsistent. Fans started calling Randy the show's way of adapting. The theory is, Randy represents how people keep reinventing themselves to stay relevant. He's always chasing the next big thing. He jumps on trends before they peak and drops them when they crash. This makes Randy a comment on modern culture where people constantly rebrand themselves. Nobody sticks with one identity anymore. Everyone is trying to be something new and different. Randy is that urge taken to the extreme. He doesn't just change hobbies. He changes his whole life every few months. But this brings up questions the show hasn't answered. First question, how does Randy afford all these changes? He quit his geologist job years ago. He has no steady income besides Tegrity Farms. Yet he can afford to start new businesses and buy equipment and move his family around. Where does the money come from? The show never talks about this. Randy just has unlimited money for whatever project he's obsessed with right now. Second question, does Randy remember his past changes? Does he look back at his old projects and feel bad? Or does he just move forward without thinking about what he left behind? The show hasn't shown Randy thinking about his past. He's always focused on the present. Then there's the question of how this affects his family. Sharon divorced Randy at one point because she was tired of his behavior, but then they got back together. Shelley is constantly angry at her father for being embarrassing and unstable. Stan used to look up to Randy, but now he mostly just tolerates him. The family has been dragged through all Randy's changes, and they've paid the price. But the show doesn't focus on this. It treats Randy's changes as comedy without looking at the real damage they cause. The family suffers, but then everything resets and they deal with Randy's next project. Fans argue about whether Randy constantly changing makes him a better or worse character. Some fans love new Randy. He moves the plot forward. He creates chaos. He's where most of the show's cultural commentary comes from now. The show used to focus on the kids. Now it focuses on Randy. This shift happened slowly, but by season 22, it was done. Randy became the main character, and the kids became side characters in his story. Other fans hate this. They think Randy works better in small amounts. When Randy is the focus of every episode, him being unstable stops being funny and starts being annoying. The show lost balance by making him too important. There's also the question of whether Randy will ever settle down. Tegrity Farms has lasted longer than any of his other projects. Does this mean Randy finally found something he cares about? Or will he get bored and move on to the next thing? The show hasn't committed either way. Randy could run Tegrity Farms forever. Or he could sell it tomorrow and start something new. Both fit who he is. Being unpredictable is the point. You never know which version of Randy you'll get from episode to episode. Some fans think Randy's changes reflect the show itself. South Park has changed a lot over 25 seasons. It started as crude shock comedy. Then it became political satire. Then it became serialized drama. Then it went back to episodic comedy. The show keeps reinventing itself, just like Randy keeps reinventing himself. Maybe Randy is the show commenting on its own identity crisis. The show doesn't know what it wants to be anymore, so it makes Randy not know what he wants to be either. Both are looking for purpose, and both keep changing direction. Looking at Randy now,
It's clear he's not the character he used to be. The geologist dad from the early seasons is gone. Instead, there's someone who changes so much he barely has a consistent personality. The show uses this to stay flexible and talk about current events. But it also makes you wonder who Randy actually is underneath all the changes. Does he have a core identity? Or is he just a bunch of temporary obsessions? The show hasn't answered this. Randy keeps changing, and the mystery of why he can't stay still stays unsolved. Moving on, we have the Pandemic Special Canon Question. Section 16, the Pandemic Special Canon Question. South Park made 2 special episodes about the COVID-19 pandemic.
The first was the Pandemic Special, which aired in September 2020. The second was actually 2 hour-long movies called South Park Post-COVID and South Park Post-COVID, The Return of COVID, which aired in November and December 2021. These specials were about the pandemic and what came after. But they created big continuity problems. The Pandemic Special made the characters slightly older. The post-COVID movies jumped 40 years ahead and showed the kids as adults. Then at the end, the timeline reset and everyone went back to normal. This makes you wonder if the Pandemic Specials are canon. Do they count as part of the main story? Or are they separate what-if stories that don't affect the regular show? The answer matters because the specials brought in huge changes that were then erased. The Pandemic Special started with South Park dealing with COVID-19 like the real world did. The kids were doing online school, the town was in lockdown, people were wearing masks and social distancing. Randy was trying to keep Tegrity Farms running during the pandemic. The special felt grounded in reality. It mentioned real events and real frustrations people had in 2020. This made it different from normal South Park episodes, which usually deal with exaggerated versions of real events. The Pandemic Special was keeping things pretty real. The kids were dealing with real problems. Their lives had changed because of the virus. This suggested the pandemic was going to become part of the show's ongoing story. But then the post-COVID movies went in a totally different direction. These movies jumped to the year 2061. The kids were in their 50s. They had jobs and families and completely different lives. Stan was a depressed online whiskey salesman. Kyle was a counselor. Cartman had converted to Judaism and became a rabbi with a wife and kids. Kenny had become a brilliant scientist but died in a lab accident. The movies showed a future where the pandemic never really ended. People were still wearing masks and getting vaccines decades later. The world had become paranoid and isolated. The kids had grown apart and barely talked to each other anymore. The movies told a time travel story. The adult versions of the characters tried to go back in time to stop the future from happening. They wanted to change the past so their lives would be better. This made a complicated plot about multiple timelines and alternate realities. In the end, Stan and Kyle changed the past. They stopped the bad future. The timeline reset. Everything went back to how it was. The kids were young again, the future was gone. The movies ended with things going back to normal. But this created problems for the show's continuity. Here's the first problem. The Pandemic Special showed the kids getting slightly older. They looked a little older. They were dealing with more mature problems. This suggested time was passing. But then the regular show came back, and the kids were the same age they always were. They didn't look older anymore. They were back in 4th grade like nothing happened. So did the Pandemic Special age them or not? The show hasn't said. It just moved on like the special never happened. The second problem is the post-COVID movies showed a specific future for all the characters. We saw who they became as adults. We saw their relationships and jobs. Even though that future was erased, we still saw it. Does that future still exist as a possibility? Or does erasing it mean it could never happen? The show hasn't mentioned the Pandemic Specials in regular episodes since they came out. Characters don't mention COVID. They don't talk about lockdowns or vaccines or anything about the pandemic. It's like the specials happened in a different universe. This suggests they might not be canon. They might have been one-time stories made to talk about the pandemic while it was happening. Now that the pandemic isn't a daily thing anymore, the show moved on. But if the specials aren't canon, why did they use the same characters and settings as the main show? Why show the kids' future if that future doesn't matter? Fans are divided on this question. Some fans think the specials are definitely canon. The Pandemic Special aged the kids slightly, and those changes should stay. The post-COVID future might have been erased, but it still shows where the characters were going before they changed the timeline. This group wants the show to acknowledge the specials and build on them.
Other fans think the specials clearly aren't canon. They were side stories that don't affect the main show. The timeline resetting at the end of post-COVID proved this.
Everything went back to normal because the specials were always meant to be temporary.
A third group of fans doesn't care either way. They just enjoyed the specials as standalone content and don't need them to fit into a bigger story.
Then there's the question of what jumping ahead in time in post-COVID showed us.
The movies showed specific futures for each character. Cartman became a good person and started a family. Kyle stayed angry and bitter.
Stan became depressed and isolated.
Kenny died trying to save the world. These futures felt wrong. The characters had turned into messed up versions of themselves. Part of the point was the pandemic ruined their lives by keeping them apart.
But it also suggested these were realistic outcomes if the characters kept going the way they were.
Cartman could find redemption. Kyle could stay stuck in his rage. Stan could give up. Kenny could sacrifice himself.
The movie treated these futures as believable, even though they were bad.
This makes you wonder about the show's long-term plans. Does South Park have an endgame for its characters? Does it know how Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny will end up?
The post-COVID movies suggested the show has thought about this.
It created a whole future timeline with detail and consequences. But then it erased that timeline and went back to normal. Maybe the show was testing ideas. Maybe it wanted to see how fans would react to adult versions of the characters. Or maybe the show was making a point that the future doesn't matter because South Park lives in the eternal present. The kids will never actually grow up.
They'll never actually become those adults.
The future will always be erased. There's also the question of whether the pandemic will ever be mentioned again. The pandemic special is timely. It talked about events as they were happening. But now, several years have passed, the pandemic is over. Does the show still need to mention it, or can it act like the pandemic never happened? Most shows have moved on from pandemic storylines.
They went back to normal like the pandemic was a bad dream.
South Park could do the same thing. It could treat the specials as a closed chapter that doesn't need to be brought up again. Looking at the pandemic specials now, they exist in a weird space between canon and non-canon. They used the main characters and settings, they told stories that had consequences, but those consequences were erased and the show moved on without talking about them. Fans who want clear answers about what counts as canon won't get them. The show is keeping its options open. The specials could be canon if the show wants to use them again, or they could stay separate as special events that don't affect the main story. South Park won't commit either way, and not committing creates a mystery that might never get solved.
Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown.
Moving on to the unresolved fate of Garrison's presidency. Section 17. The unresolved fate of Garrison's presidency. Mr. Garrison became president in season 20. He ran a campaign that was a lot like Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. The show used Garrison as a Trump replacement to talk about American politics. He said outrageous things. He insulted entire groups of people. He promised to build walls and ban immigrants. He won despite everyone predicting he would lose. For several seasons, Garrison ran the country from the White House. He made terrible decisions. He got into fights with foreign leaders. He tweeted all the time about his enemies. He focused on personal grudges instead of actually running the country. The show used Garrison being president to make fun of the Trump administration week after week. But then Trump lost the 2020 election. The show needed to move on. So Garrison stopped being president. Except the show never showed how he left office or what happened when he left. He was president one season, and then suddenly he wasn't. The change happened totally off-screen with no explanation. This makes you wonder what happened to Garrison being president, and if those seasons even count as part of the show's official story anymore. Garrison's journey to becoming president started in season 19. He was still working as the 4th grade teacher at South Park Elementary. Then, PC Principal showed up and took over the school. PC Principal fired Garrison for not being politically correct enough. Garrison lost his job and what he did. He was angry and bitter about getting pushed out. He felt rejected by a world that didn't want him anymore. So he decided to run for president to get revenge. His campaign seemed like it was supposed to fail from the start. He said horrible things about women and minorities in speeches. He suggested impossible policies like building a wall and making Canada pay for it. He acted like he was trying to lose on purpose. He wanted to embarrass the political system and then go back to South Park. But people kept supporting him anyway. The more outrageous he got, the more popular he got. His rallies got bigger, his poll numbers kept going up. The show was clearly making fun of Trump's actual 2016 campaign. Every ridiculous thing Garrison said came straight from real Trump quotes.
His running mate was Caitlyn Jenner, who spent the campaign driving around and running people over with her car.
The whole story was dark comedy about how broken American democracy was. Then, Garrison actually won the election, just like Trump won in November 2016. The show had to deal with their satire becoming real. Season 20, Episode 11, titled The End of Serialization as We Know It, wrapped up the election storyline.
Garrison became president-elect and immediately regretted winning.
He tried desperately to get out of it. He begged for a recount. He openly said he wanted Hillary Clinton to win instead. He realized he never actually wanted to be president.
He ran as a joke, expecting to lose.
But now he was stuck with the most powerful job in the world. The episode ended with Garrison finally accepting his new reality. He was going to be president whether he liked it or not. He moved to Washington, D.C.
He started living in the White House.
This set up the next several seasons where Garrison would be president, and the show would talk about everything Trump did in office. Garrison being president became a big part of seasons 21, 22, and 23. The show regularly showed him in the Oval Office making terribly bad decisions. In season 21, episode 2, titled Put It Down, Garrison was trying to start a nuclear war with North Korea because their leader insulted him on Twitter. He couldn't let the insult go. His whole foreign policy was based on his ego. He obsessed over what people said about him online instead of doing actual work. He got into fights with world leaders at summits. He insulted America's allies and praised America's enemies. The show used every terrible thing Garrison did to make fun of Trump without saying Trump's name. But this created a problem. Garrison had been a character since season 1. He had his own personality and history for 2 decades. He went through gender transitions. He had relationships with Mr. Slave and others. He had complicated stories that made him who he was. By turning Garrison into a Trump puppet, the show erased all that. Garrison stopped being himself and became just a way to do political satire. His personality changed week to week to match whatever Trump was doing in the news. Sometimes he acted like old Garrison, other times he was pure Trump. The character split into 2 versions that didn't work together. Fans argued about whether this ruined one of the show's best characters. Some thought it was brilliant political commentary. Others thought it destroyed 20 years of character work. Then Trump lost the 2020 election to Joe Biden. The show needed to end Garrison being president. But instead of showing how it ended, the show just stopped talking about it. When season 24 started, Garrison was suddenly back in South Park teaching 4th grade. He wasn't president anymore. He was at the front of his classroom like he never left. Nobody talked about him being president.
Nobody mentioned his time at the White House.
The kids didn't ask where he'd been. The town didn't treat him differently for having run the country. Everything just reset. The show didn't explain. Did Garrison lose re-election off screen? Did he quit? Did he finish his term and quietly come back? Did he get impeached? The show wouldn't tell us. It just erased him being president and moved on. Not getting closure frustrated fans who followed the story for years. The presidency storyline ran from 2016 to 2020. It was a huge part of the show during that time. Then, it ended with no payoff, no final episode, no wrap-up. Garrison just went back to his old job and everyone acted like it never happened. This fits South Park's pattern of ignoring continuity when it's convenient, but it felt lazy. The show spent years on this storyline, then it gave up on everything without finishing it. Some fans think the show dropped it because Trump jokes stopped being funny. Trump wasn't president after January 2021. Making fun of him through Garrison would have felt old. The show needed fresh material. So, it erased the whole story. Other fans think the show was making a point about American political memory. Garrison was president. He did terrible things. Then, everyone forgot and moved on. Nobody held him accountable. This is like real politics. People get mad about scandals. Then they forget and move to the next one. It repeats forever. Maybe the show used Garrison suddenly leaving to comment on America's short attention span. Looking at Garrison's presidency now, it's one of South Park's most incomplete storylines. The show spent years building a story about him running the country. It used this to comment on chaotic American politics. Then, it suddenly gave up on everything, without finishing it. We don't know how Garrison left office. We don't know if he served his full term. We don't know anything. The show just moved on. Fans noticed. Not getting answers turned what could have been brilliant satire into a frustrating dead end. The mystery of what happened to Garrison being president stays unsolved because the show has shown zero interest in solving it. Up next is the future of South Park continuity. Section 18. The future of South Park continuity. South Park has been on since 1997. That's over 25 years of episodes. During that time, the show has changed how it tells stories multiple times. It started as episodic comedy where nothing carried over. Then it tried serialization where stories connected across multiple weeks. Then it went back to episodic. Then it did specials outside the main timeline. The show keeps changing the rules about what counts as canon and what doesn't. This makes you wonder where South Park is going. Will the show ever stick to one style of storytelling? Will it keep resetting and changing direction? And most importantly, will any of the mysteries we talked about tonight ever get solved? The future of South Park's continuity depends on whether the show decides continuity matters at all. The serialized seasons were an experiment. Season 19 and 20 tried to tell one long story across a whole season. Episodes built on each other. Stories kept going week to week. Characters developed and changed. This was new for South Park. It had always been a show you could watch in any order. But the serialized seasons made you watch every episode in order to understand what was happening. Some fans loved this. It made the show feel more important and ambitious. Other fans hated it. They wanted South Park to go back to being simple and episodic. They didn't want homework. They wanted to laugh at dumb jokes and move on. The show listened to the complaints. After season 20, it pulled back from serialization. Season 21 was less connected. Season 22 had some ongoing plots, but also standalone episodes. By season 23, the show was mostly episodic again. Each episode told its own story. You didn't need to remember what happened last week. The show found a middle ground where it could do callbacks and references without making viewers track complicated ongoing plots. This made both groups of fans happy. But it also meant the show stopped solving long-term mysteries. If nothing carries over, mysteries don't need answers. They can just hang there forever. This brings us to the question of whether South Park will ever tie up loose ends. The show has brought up dozens of mysteries over the years. Kenny's curse, Cartman's father, PC Principal's backstory, Garrison's presidency, Canada's weirdness. Most of these mysteries have been partly explained, but never fully solved. The show gives us hints in pieces. Then it moves on before finishing the story. This pattern suggests the show isn't interested in closure. It would rather create new mysteries than solve old ones. This keeps things fresh and unpredictable. But it also means fans who want answers probably won't get them. The post-COVID movies suggested the show might be thinking about its endgame. Those movies jumped 40 years ahead and showed where the characters ended up. Even though that future was erased, the fact the show created it means the writers have thought about how things could end. They know what adult Stan looks like. They know what happens to Cartman and Kyle's friendship. They know how Kenny dies. This information exists even if it's not canon anymore. The show could bring it back someday. Or it could create a totally different future. The point is, the show has options. It doesn't have to stay in 4th grade forever. But there's also the possibility that South Park never ends in a traditional way. The show could just keep going until it gets canceled. The characters would stay in 4th grade, the mysteries would stay unsolved, everything would continue in an eternal present where nothing really changes. This is how most long-running cartoons work. The Simpsons has been on for over 30 years and still hasn't fixed its continuity problems. Family Guy has been on for over 20 years and its timeline makes no sense. South Park could do the same thing. It could run for decades without ever giving a final answer about anything. Fans have different opinions about what they want the show to do. Some fans want a proper ending. They want the show to age up the characters and tell a final story. They want closure on all the big mysteries. They want to see Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny grow up and move on. This group thinks the show should end while it's still good instead of going on forever. Other fans want the show to keep going as long as possible. They don't care about continuity or closure. They just want new episodes that make them laugh. This group thinks the show should never end. It should keep reinventing itself and finding new things to make fun of. The creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker have talked about the show's future in interviews. They've said they'll keep making South Park as long as they enjoy it. They're not interested in forcing an ending just for closure.
They like having the freedom to do whatever they want.
They like being able to change direction when something stops working. This suggests the show will keep going in its current form for the foreseeable future. Episodic stories with occasional callbacks. New mysteries brought up and old mysteries left hanging. No long-term plan, no end game, just whatever feels right at the time. This approach has kept the show relevant for 25 years.
By refusing to commit to one direction, South Park can adapt to whatever is happening in the world.
It can make fun of current events without being locked into old storylines. It can bring back old characters when it wants and ignore them when it doesn't. This flexibility is the show's greatest strength. But it's also why so many mysteries stay unsolved. The show values flexibility over closure.
It would rather keep options open than give answers.
There's also the question of whether future generations will care about South Park's continuity. Kids who start watching the show today weren't alive when Kenny's curse was revealed. They didn't watch Garrison become president. They don't know about the Coon and Friends trilogy, or the Member Berries, or any of the old storylines. To them, South Park is just the current episodes. The old mysteries don't matter because they didn't experience them. This means the show's long-term continuity only matters to longtime fans. New viewers don't need it. They can jump in at any point and enjoy the show without knowing the history. This gives the show even less reason to solve old mysteries. Why answer questions most of the audience isn't asking? Looking at South Park's future now, it seems clear the show will keep doing what it's always done. It will create new mysteries and leave old ones unsolved. It will experiment with storytelling styles and then drop them when it gets bored. It will age the characters when it helps a story and keep them young when it doesn't. The mysteries we talked about tonight probably won't get clean answers. Kenny's curse will stay partly explained. Cartman's father reveal will stay incomplete. PC Principal's backstory will stay hidden. The show doesn't need to solve these things to keep going. It can just keep moving forward and hope fans enjoy the ride. That's the real mystery of South Park. Not whether individual questions will get answered, but whether the show will ever care enough about continuity to give answers at all. Right now, the answer seems to be no. The show is fine with leaving things messy and unresolved. And maybe that's the point. Life doesn't give you clean answers. Mysteries stay mysterious. Questions go unanswered. South Park shows that reality by refusing to wrap everything up in a neat package. The mysteries are part of the show's DNA. Solving them would change what South Park is. So, they stay unsolved. And they probably always will. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.